From the broken ruins of Babylon, this is End of Days Radio. I am your host, Daniel, broadcasting to you all the way from that shimmering Emerald City right here in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. Hello, how are you? Today's date is March 21st, 2020. Here we are amidst the pandemic of the coronavirus. It is still sweeping the globe as we speak. I know many people are sick. I'm not sure if many are still questioning the existence of the virus. The panic and the hysteria is certainly a manipulation. It is certainly fake in that aspect. But the virus itself seems to be very, very real. It seems to be very real. Perhaps not as dangerous and as deadly as they say, yet still very, very dangerous. I went to the store today. They were literally completely out of toilet paper and napkins and all of that good stuff that we need to keep ourselves clean and healthy. I'm just not really sure how long this is going to last. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to start using leaves. I'm not sure if it's to that point. But we can talk about that later. For now, we've got a show to do. Keep on trucking. Keep on trucking. You like that, Al? Keep on trucking. I saw Al was popping up in the chat room. Keep on trucking. Today's guest is none other than Brian Regal. Brian Regal is an American historian of science. He's a skeptic and a writer. He is assistant professor of the history of science at Kean University in New Jersey. Regal is the author of Searching for Sasquatch, Crackpots, Eggheads, and Cryptozoology, a scholarly study on cryptozoology. Might be in trouble here. He has also written on the history of the Jersey Devil. So this is the first time we've had a real skeptic on here. We've typically shied away from that sort of guest because, well, hey, who wants to make things difficult, right? But it's getting boring. It's getting boring doing the same stuff. It's getting boring. Sometimes we got to mix it up. And that might mean we need to get a little skeptical sometimes. And who knows, this might not turn out to be that skeptical. Brian Regal, he's got a lot of stuff to talk about. But instead of talking about him, why don't we talk to him? I'm going to go ahead and give him a call. Yeah. All right. Oh, actually, you know what? We've got about 5 minutes to kill. I do this every time I start early. 4 minutes. So I am going to call him. I'm just going to call him in a few more minutes. So, how awkward, right? Now I got to quickly think of something to talk about for 3 minutes. Oh. Hey, did you guys know that there's a new Transformers series coming out on Netflix? Yeah, I literally just watched the preview before I jumped on air. And the animation looks a little different, but it seems to be very close to the representation from the 80s, the show that we all loved. The original and actual Transformers that most of us remember. I'm psyched about that. I know that a lot of people were really into the movies. The movies were cool, but it was the original cartoon series that was kind of my cup of tea. Got to get prepared. I've been pounding vitamin C ever since I started feeling kind of sick. Yeah, I've been talking about that on these past few shows. How I haven't been feeling well. Sucks. Have that like wet feeling in my chest and sore throat. Ever since I was pounding vitamin C, I have felt a lot better. My friend Thomas, who's an inventor, he's going to come on the show. We've tried to do a show several times, but something always happens. But he's going to come on the show, and he was telling me just keep pounding that vitamin C. Pound that damn vitamin C. So I've been taking like vitamin C every couple hours or something like that. And it really has helped. It's at least kept my symptoms in check. I know I'm still sick. I still have that icky, yuck, sick feeling, but I feel like my symptoms have really kind of scaled back. I feel pretty much fine right now. I'm not saying I'm not contagious to others, but I do feel a lot better. Okay, there's another minute went by. Let's go ahead and call him. Hello, Brian.
Hello.
Howdy. I'm just going to adjust your screen a little bit for me to make sure the audience can see you, okay?
How's that?
Almost there. Let's see here. That's our full screen. There we go. Let me just check it with the audience real quick. And it looks great. Okay. Brian, how are you doing?
Good, pretty good.
How are you doing amidst all this pandemic? Is it freaking you out at all? You seem to be in high spirits.
Well, I was a soldier years ago, so I was trained for anything. And I have an old Army shot record that's about 2 feet long. So and I was trained to survive in a nuclear, biological, and chemical environment. So I'm good.
Oh, I had no idea that you were in the service. That's interesting. I figured you were kind of like the professor type, but you're more 3D than I knew.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I served in the Armor Cav back in the Stone Age.
Any crazy stories from back then? Did you have anything weird happen?
Yeah, but I can't tell you about them, or I'd have to find you and kill you.
Ah, that's not uncommon for guests on this show, so no worries. But hey,
I was on the Iron Curtain Border Patrol for a while, so I saw some interesting things there.
oh, okay, that's cool. That's one of the things that's so neat about the military. A lot of people that might not make their way to certain places end up visiting those places and coming back with some really interesting experiences.
Yeah, and nobody, when I tell them, nobody ever believes me that I was in the service for almost 8 years because they see this and they think I'm some kind of like, weirdo, which I am, but a weirdo with a military background.
Yeah, well, hey, if you're a weirdo, I must be something more extreme. So, so don't worry about it. We're all subject to our own little idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
But hey, when did this kind of start for you? Like, when did you decide you wanted to start writing about monstrous legends?
Well, I wanted to be a historian since I was a kid. Uh, I wanted to be Johnny Quest. I don't know if any of your audience get that reference, but there was
Yes.
this super cool TV show on like a million years ago called Johnny Quest. It was animated, and he was like the coolest 13-year-old in the world who got to go around the world and have adventures and thwart evildoers. And when I saw that, I said, "That's what I want to do." But I grew up in the Ironbound section of Newark, New Jersey, and no one from the Ironbound ever went to college or did anything like that. My dad was a crane operator. My mom was a waitress. Um, and so, everyone, everyone in my grammar school, I went to a Catholic grammar school, which explains a lot. And then to a public high school, and no one there ever told me that I would be able to, do anything sort of scholarly like I wanted. And in fact, when I was a junior in high school, when you had to do that thing where you went to see the guidance counselor and you told them what your plans were, and I told my guidance counselor, well, I want to go to college and I want to be a historian and I want to be a writer. And she looked at my transcripts and then she looked back at me and said, kids like you don't go to college.
That
And
is
that was it.
wow. This is cool because
So
I think that what happened to you probably has happened to a lot of people, and you might actually serve as an inspiration to people who have received similar stifling.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't come from a background where people became academics or wrote books. That was, writers were people who lived in another dimension. No one I knew and no one I knew who knew anyone didn't know writers. They weren't even sure what the term academic meant. But I just had this kind of primeval desire to do this. And when it turned out I wasn't going to be going to college, not then anyway, I decided, well, my dad had been a tank driver in the Korean War, so I'll join the army and I'll go visit the world on Uncle Sam's dime, and so that's what I did.
Uncle Sam's dime, I like that too.
I guess I should say Uncle Sam's dollar now.
Yeah, yeah, things have definitely inflated. So you're in the military, and um, is this how you managed to go to school? Was that how you paid for it?
No, no, I was completely stupid. They offered me all kinds of um, programs where you put some money in every month and they matched it for college. And at the time, uh, I sort of began to listen to all these people who told me that I wasn't smart enough to go to college. So I said, why should I waste my money on this? And so I never did it until I got out. And I went through a series of different jobs. And finally, I had some, as a kid, I had some facility for drawing. And so I went to art school briefly when I got out of the service. And I started getting work as an advertising designer, scientific and technical illustrator. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design briefly. And I started doing that. And I got a job. I had talked myself into a job at AT&T as an industrial designer, which I had no training in. And they said, "Can you design phones?" I said, "Sure, of course I can design phones. Anybody can design phones." And so they gave me a job, and so I decided, well, maybe I should go to college because they told me that I was a contract worker, and they said you're never going to get a permanent job here unless you have a degree. And so there was a college that had this program to help older people who had never gone to college to sort of start to kind of give you a gateway into this. And so I did that as an industrial design major. But then I got fired from AT&T when they downsized, and in the facility I was in, they let 300 people go in one day,
Oh
and I
my
was one of
God,
them.
that is a
And
terrible
so I
amount of
realized,
layoffs.
well, I don't need to continue on with the industrial design degree, but I always wanted to be a historian. Maybe this is my time. So I switched majors, and I was extremely lucky in having a few faculty members who were very inspirational and helped guide me and gave me information because, I didn't know anybody who had gone to college, let alone graduate school. But I was extremely lucky to meet some people who gave of their time and, wrote letters of applications for me. And next thing you know, here I am.
What fueled this desire to become a history professor? What was it early on that kind of struck that chord or inspired it?
Well, I love the idea of books, of reading, and by the time I was in the eighth grade, I knew what citations were. From just reading a lot, and I loved the libraries. I haunted the libraries, all the libraries I can get my hands on. And one day, after a while, if you know any of the history of Newark, New Jersey, in the late '60s, the city gets racked by a series of riots, race riots, and my parents decided to move across the river to Kearney, and they had this great library, actually a Carnegie library, which is still there in Kearney. And I was in there, and one day I said to the librarian, "Do you have any books on monsters?" And she showed me this book about called uh, "Strange Sea Creatures," and strange sea creatures and other dangerous marine life. And I was just enthralled by it. And I like to say that that's where my career began because I sat down and read this book, and I said, "This is what I want to do. This is what I'm really interested in. I like science. I like history." And so I just went from there.
And when was it that you started to realize that there were people out there that believed in some really strange and outlandish things?
Oh, right off the bat, there's I started reading basically anything I could get my hands on in junior high and high school. Reading anything I could get my hands on that was about monsters, and I began to see all this really strange stuff. And I said, "Wow, there's a lot of weird people out there who believe in these crazy things." And so I started reading up on them, and that very slowly built to the point when I went to do my graduate work. I worked under this terrific guy named David Cohn, who was a Darwin scholar. And he said, "Oh, you should." He was really into Darwin's botany. He said, "Oh, you should do your dissertation on Darwin and his botany." I said, "I'm not really interested in plants. I don't not like plants, but I don't really want to spend all that time." And I found this guy, Henry Fairfield Osborn, who was the longtime head of the American Museum of Natural History in the late 19th and early 20th century. And I started reading up on him, and I became fascinated by him. He's the guy who sent Roy Chapman Andrews off to outer Mongolia on the Central Asiatic expeditions. Roy Chapman Andrews is the guy that George Lucas patterned Indiana Jones on. And it was Osborne who coined the name Tyrannosaurus. He also coined the name Velociraptor. And so he was heavily into dinosaurs and politics and evolution. And I said, this guy's for me. And the other thing that was great about Osborne was that he was one of these guys who didn't wipe his behind without saving it. And so there was this huge amount of primary source material. Historians, the thing we love the most are primary documents, letters, correspondence, notebooks, scribblings, marginalia, anything. And with Osborne, there was just a ton of it. And so I dove in head first. And while I was writing my dissertation about evolution and politics and culture, I started coming across all this stuff about monsters, and it kind of reawakened in me this interest I had. And so after I finished my doctorate, and I wrote a book. I was asked to write a book on evolution, controversies in human evolution. And when I was done with that, I worked some monster stuff into there. And that's when I rediscovered Grover Krantz, who I had seen on In Search of years before. And unfortunately, Krantz had just died. This was like 2005 when I started this project. And so I couldn't go talk to him. But then I found out that his estate had given all of his paperwork, all his letters and notebooks and things to the Smithsonian. So I hopped on a train down to Washington, and I think I'm the first person to ever go through Krantz's material. I might be the only person, even still to this day, the only person who went through all of Krantz's material. And that's how I wound up with the book Searching for Sasquatch. So, and it just kept on rolling from there.
At what point in your life were you sure that it was evolution? Was there any religious upbringing? Was there any point where you decided, or was it just kind of always how you felt?
I think it was all I was always felt that way. Now, what's funny is, and other people in this situation, I think, will tell you the same thing. I went to Catholic grammar. I was raised a Catholic in a Catholic family in a Catholic neighborhood. Went to Catholic church every Sunday, and we there was never any of this sort of ruckus that you get today in some of the more Protestant Christian schools. We did Bible study on Monday. We did science on Tuesday. I learned about evolution in Catholic school. And, the nuns didn't think anything. The nuns and the priests never gave us a hard time. Parents never picketed. I don't want my kid learning about this stuff. And so it just seemed a natural thing to me. It never seemed unnatural. It seemed like so obvious that living things change over time. And everything I read and everything I saw, my mother took me to the Museum of Natural History once when I was a little kid, standing there under that original Tyrannosaurus skeleton. Anything seems possible. And so it was never really much of a difficult idea to grasp.
Were you as excited as I was when the first Jurassic Park movie came out?
Oh yeah, I saw it on the opening day. It's the only movie I've ever seen on opening day. A friend of ours who was a paleontologist up at Brown University. We were up visiting with her, and that was the weekend the movie came out. So we all got in the car and went and saw Jurassic Park on opening day.
Do you still have any of that Catholicism in you? Is it something you entertain at all, or have you kind of thrown it all away?
Well, you can't throw it away. It's I make the joke. It's like being in the mafia or the CIA. You're never really out. You can run away and you cannot pay any attention to it, but you're never really out from it because they do stuff to your brain when you're a little kid in Catholic
Oh my god.
school, and no amount of atheistic thinking is ever going to get rid of that. And so when I was a little kid, I really wasn't much interested. Even when I was, I did the whole thing. I did First Holy Communion and confirmation. I did the whole thing. But it was never really an interest to me. I wasn't like some sort of pioneering 8-year-old atheist. It just didn't interest me. The church itself, the physical church, I love the stained glass windows and the statues and all that sort of thing. But the theology, not so much.
What are your theories on that? Is religion kind of a control thing? Is it just from human ignorance?
I think it's more out of human fear than ignorance. Humans, I tell my students this all the time, humans are the biggest scaredy cats in the universe. Until we find sentient alien life somewhere out there in space, and I'm sure someday we will, um, we're afraid. Humans are afraid of everything. We're afraid of the dark. We're afraid of the light. We're afraid of being alone. We're afraid of being with people. There really isn't anything we're not afraid of. And so we come up with these ways to try to make ourselves less frightened. And for a lot of people, religion does that. The idea that there is some sort of higher power out there that no matter how horrible it gets now, you're going to be taken care of at some point. And that's very appealing to people.
What do you define as pseudoscience?
Well, that's a good question because pseudoscience doesn't really exist until science exists. You can't have the opposite of something until you have the first thing. But in simplest terms, pseudoscience is any kind of intellectual endeavor which attempts to look on the surface like genuine science, but isn't. One of the examples I give to my students is I say, think of astroturf, the sort of artificial grass that they use on baseball fields. From a distance, it looks like grass, which is the point of it. But when you get up close, you realize it's not grass. And that's what pseudoscience. From a distance, it looks like genuine science. It looks like an intellectual endeavor which is following the sort of standard accepted procedures of science, the acquisition of facts and empirical evidence and the testing and the hypothesis and all the reliance upon provable knowledge. But when you get up close to it, pseudoscience begins to break down because it's often not based on any of those things. It's often more faith-based, almost religiously.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of the issue. But what happened when you start to get into Sasquatch? Did you find there really wasn't anything there worth hunting for?
Yeah, I give talks on this a lot to library groups and civics groups and organizations and such. And I always start off by saying, if you came here hoping to have me tell you that Bigfoot or the Jersey Devil is real, you're going to be really disappointed. Because these things don't exist. And I said, let's just tear that Band-Aid off right now. There is no Bigfoot. There's no Sasquatch. There's no Yeti. There's no Loch Ness Monster. There's no Ogopogo. There's no Opabawa. There's no Jersey Devil. There's none of that stuff exists. But I have a much more interesting story to tell you about it. And then I launch into that, and that usually calms people down.
Yeah, I did actually want to hear that story. I did hear it before on another program and it just turned me on so much. I just would love to hear it again. So if you'd like to go into it, I'd love to hear it.
Which one are we talking about?
Oh, I thought you probably meant the Jersey Devil one.
Oh yeah, well I can give you the quick Jersey Devil story if you like.
Sure.
Okay. Well, the popular theory or the popular story about the Jersey Devil is that here in there's, when people think of New Jersey, they think of the Sopranos, they think of Springsteen, they think of of these big built up cities and the highways and the turnpike and the oil refineries, and that's basically the sort of upper northeastern part of the state. But if you head down south, the lower part of New Jersey is completely different. It's a huge forest that's called the Pine Barrens, and there are the story that back in the 1730s, a woman named Mother Leeds, who was a witch who lived in a hovel in the middle of the Pine Barrens, gave birth to her 13th child, and it turns out it comes out, it's kind of like a baby with wings, and then it's got a horsey head on it, and it kind of runs off, and it disappears into the woods, and spends the next several centuries sort of accosting innocent passersby. It never really does much. It just sort of looks scary, and then whoever sees it runs away, and that's that. The basic image of what this thing looks like is I tell people, imagine Pegasus with a really bad crack addiction. And then
Great description.
That's what the Jersey Devil looks like. Pegasus really let himself go, and that's what what are those creatures from Harry Potter that what are they called? They sort of look like horses with wings. That's basically what the Jersey Devil looks like.
He doesn't take
So
good
that's
care
the
of himself.
popular story. I'm sorry.
I just said he probably doesn't take the best care of himself.
No, he really let himself go. You'd think he'd, but a few years ago, a colleague of mine at Kean University, where I teach, we were sitting around talking about this, and we had just seen, I forget whether it was Monster Quest or one of those shows. They did a bit on the Jersey Devil, and it was just awful. It was just recycling a lot of bad stories that had been recycled a million times without anybody ever going to check on it. And so we both looked at each other and we said, let's do something on the Jersey Devil, because Frank Esposito, Professor Frank Esposito, my co-author on the Jersey Devil book, his specialty is Native American history and New Jersey history. And so we said, let's write a book on the Jersey Devil. Let's do what historians do that has never really been done about this subject. There's tons of books out there. If you Google Jersey Devil, you'll get a zillion websites, and there's a bunch of books, most of which are awful, which just sort of rehash the same thing over and over again, written by people who a lot of them who should know better. And we decided, okay, let's start from scratch. And let's do what historians do. And we went out and we began to scour the archives for primary sources. And we began finding lots of stuff, far more than we ever thought. And so we sat down and we put this thing together. And in the legend of Jersey Devil, there's basically three characters. There's the Jersey Devil himself, his mother Leeds, and then his sort of quasi father Daniel Leeds. And so that's where we started. And Daniel Leeds was a real person, and he lived in what was then West Jersey in the late 1600s. He's a Quaker who comes from England, and he settles in Burlington, New Jersey, which is a Quaker enclave. And he's got a plan. He wants to bring to what at the time is kind of the outer edge of the British Empire. We don't really think of New Jersey as the outer edge of anything. But at that time in the late 17th century, New Jersey it's not even being called New Jersey yet. It's still East Jersey and West Jersey. It is really the edge of the British Empire. And he's got this plan to bring science and theology and astronomy and alchemy to the outer edges of his world. And that's what he tries to do. He starts publishing books and almanacs. And the Quaker fathers decide that he's up to no good, that he's spreading occult knowledge. And so not only is Daniel Leeds the very first published author in New Jersey, he's the first censored author. And his books are burned, his almanacs are burned, and he starts to get this reputation as the kind of occult practitioner, which he isn't. But that's the problem we have with innuendo and making up lies about people's lives. We think this whole concept of fake news is new. This goes all the way back in American history, before there was really even an America. They were practicing sort of scandal literature and politicians who lie about their opponents and that sort of thing. And so we just kept following this strand of work, and basically wrote the biography of Daniel Leeds and how he and his memory, slowly over the course of about 200 years, gets turned into a monster, and a monster that never really existed. It starts off as sort of a political animal, and then gets turned into this beast that's kind of wandering around the Meadowlands and the Pine Barrens. And the turning point comes in the early 1900s, around 1909, in Philadelphia. There's a dye museum called the Ninth and Arch Street Dye Museum, which unfortunately isn't there anymore. I've seen pictures of it, and it was a sort of magnificent Victorian building. And dye museums are really popular. That's where you went to see freaks and jugglers and, magicians perform. And they got it into their head to do an exhibit because there were reports of sort of strange goings on in southern New Jersey. And the name Leeds Devil kept coming up. And as soon as they heard Leeds Devil, they thought they'd hit the jackpot because they're going to build something around this. But they decided that Leeds Devil didn't quite sing. And so they thought about it a bit, and they came up with Jersey Devil. And so what they did was they rented a kangaroo, and they painted it green, and they attached wings to it, and they put it on display in the dark, in sort of a darkened stage area with a lot of dramatic lighting, and people would come, pay a price to come in, pay 10 cents, hence dime museum, and they would get to look at this thing for a minute, and then they get shooed out, and then a new group would be brought in, and this worked really well, and they made tons of money off of it. And then people started saying, I don't think that's real. It looks like a kangaroo painted green. And so finally they said, well, okay, you got it. It was fake. It was just a kangaroo that we painted green. And people were like, well, how could you do that? How could you fake this? And they were basically like, duh, we're a dime museum. That's what we do. We fake stuff. Nothing in here is real. But the problem was that was all it took, because now, despite the fact that they admitted that this was a hoax, people started saying, "Oh no, I've seen this. I've seen it running around the woods. It's real." And so that's how we get this story. And so that's the story we told, or we tell, in our book, "The Secret History of the Jersey Devil," available online at Amazon in a nice paperback now. That's the shameless self-promotion part of my talk here. And so that's how we worked out this whole story.
Yeah, that's so interesting because first off, it's terrible that they were abusing that poor kangaroo, and the other thing is to hear about how something can be seeded or pollinated into people's thinking, and how that can kind of take on a life of its own. That's really interesting. It makes you wonder, what other things are like that. Could that be like Sasquatch, et cetera, et cetera?
Right. Well, one of the things that we realized as we were doing this, Frank and I, that this isn't just a story about some crazy people running around the Pine Barrens in the late 1600s. This is a story that has to do with political maneuvering, with religious bigotry, with the hatred of women. Mother Leeds is cast as this kind of pushy woman who needs to be kept down by the church. There's nothing like that going on today, uh, and so we thought that it still had relevance to the 21st century.
Yeah, that's very true. Women are often associated with witches and things like that. I'm not sure if people realize how sexist that actually is.
Yeah, well, it is terribly.
How do you feel about occult knowledge?
Well, it all depends upon what your definition is. I mean, the word occult simply means hidden.
Yeah, is this something that you'll research on the side?
Well, I teach. In fact, this in the fall semester, I'm doing my course on the history of alchemy, and so we talk a lot about the meaning of occult and what are the kind of underlying inferences of this sort of loaded term. Because as soon as people hear the word occult, they think about witches and wizards and that kind of thing, which has the very notion of things that are the occult have gotten a very kind of dark reputation. Daniel Leeds, for example, was accused of being an occultist because he practiced astrology. But Leeds would have told you that astrology was not an occult practice; it was a Christian practice. He would have told you that to look at the movement of the stars uh, is a way to know God better, because if God made the universe, God made the stars and the planets, and God made the stars and planets move the way they do, and therefore humans can learn about God's creation by studying the movement of the heavens and studying astrology. So he didn't see it as some kind of awful, terrible thing. But in our modern day world, the occult is often seen as some sort of anti-religion and especially anti-Christian concept, and people get very nervous about it.
Yeah, it's often called the devil. Like they'll call it the devil right away, but I wonder if this is the same thing where people cast aspersions on the occult. Is it kind of the same superstition of why they believe in things like the Jersey Devil?
Well, again, I think it goes back to this idea that humans are afraid of everything. We're especially afraid of things we don't understand. And if you don't understand it, you attack it. And that's how we turn things into things to fear. We attack them. We say, "Oh, don't believe in this thing because it's bad." Uh, you know, the equality of women is a bad thing. The equality of all ethnic groups is a bad thing because we don't really understand it, and so therefore you have to attack it. And how do you do that? You tell lies about it, and you create this sort of mythology about something so that that other people will say, well, I'm not gonna learn about this thing or believe this thing or like anybody who's into this thing because whatever that thing is, it's bad. I don't know why it's bad, but I've been told that it's bad.
Do you have people that are, well, I'm sure you do, but do you have people that are cryptozoologists and people that are, quote unquote foil hats and people of this nature? Do they get really pissed off at you, Brian? Do they like come at you at all? Do they ever
Oh yeah,
like?
sure. I get angry emails all the time. Uh, it's part of the job. I teach at Kean University, which is a public university here in New Jersey, and it's part of my brief to engage with the public. And so I go online and I'm on Twitter, and I do op-ed pieces in various local newspapers and things, and I'm always getting screamed at and yelled at by people. Um, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just one of these horrible liberal professors, and you don't really understand the people, and you live in a rarefied world. And I feel like saying to people, let me show you the 3 floor lead paint covered tenement I grew up in the Ironbound, and tell me how elitist I am. And I you don't know. I was out there in the woods. I saw the Jersey Devil. I saw Bigfoot. You don't know what you're talking about. And so I get that on a regular basis. It's sort of part of it comes along with the job.
And how will you usually handle that if somebody starts to get perhaps a little bit too nasty with you?
Well, I have, because I'm out there in the Twitter sphere. I'm employed by a state institution, and so I have certain rules for myself that I follow when I do this. I never use foul language. I never call people stupid, even though some of them are. I have to keep a certain professional veneer going because of my position. And I try to reason with people and say, well, if you believe this, can you show me the evidence for it? Or they'll say, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong about that. And I'll say, well, here's the evidence for it. And that usually shuts people up, and then they go away. And if I was a female, however, it'd be very different. I mean, the worst hate mail I've ever gotten is as nothing compared to some of the female colleagues I have who have been attacked and threatened, in the most horrible ways for saying some pretty innocuous stuff. So it's pretty crazy out there, but it's part of my job, and so I do it, and I try to educate people, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
What do you suppose what you just said about females getting attacked? What do you suppose triggers that? Is it just certain men needing to feel like they're always superior to women, or what is up with that? Why is that happening?
You know, um, that's the $64 question. And I before the university shut down from this whole coronavirus thing, I was talking with some of my junior seminar students, and one of my females, a very bright young woman, we were talking about something, and she said, "Is that because men always screw this up?" And I said, "Let me explain something to you. The worst creatures on this planet are human males. There really isn't anything worse than us. We're terrible. We're horrible. There's a few good ones running around, but most men are hugely insecure. Um, they're afraid of women, so therefore they hate them, and that's something you're just going to have to accept because I don't know how to fix it. I'm a historian. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. And when I told her that, she said, "Oh, I knew it. I was right all along." I said, "Yeah, you were. You're right all along. I'm not going to lie to you. Human males are the worst creatures on earth, and so there. I don't know always how to explain that. I just know it is."
Yeah, that's a strong statement indeed. Why do you feel that men are that way? Is it too much aggression, thinking with their muscles? Why do you suppose that? Is it an urge to dominate things? Why do you suppose that the world is like that?
I'm not really sure. I think it's an important question. It's an important question to answer. I just don't have the answer.
Yeah, certainly. I definitely always liked my mom better than my dad. I could say that much. But let's talk about something a little bit different. I did want to ask you about unidentified flying objects. How do you feel about those? Are those fake, or is that kind of like, are you in between? Maybe some are fake and some are real. How do you feel about UFOs?
Okay, well, again, it depends upon our definition of UFO. The term means unidentified flying object. That simply means something that's in the sky and you don't know what it is. So yeah, there's stuff we see in the sky sometime and we're not sure what it is. That doesn't mean it's a flying saucer from another planet. I One of the things that I get yelled at by UFO people, um, who believe, oh, I saw the strange light in the sky. That means aliens are abducting humans. I've seen a lot of video footage and photographs of supposed flying machines from other worlds, if that's what we're going to call a UFO, a sort of mechanical conveyance from another planet. I've seen tons of photographs, tons of video, and I think I'm a pretty honest guy. I would love to know, I would love to think that there are sentient beings from another planet coming to visit us. But I've seen all this. I have never seen a single bit of video footage, film footage, or a photograph where I said, "Damn, that looks like a flying saucer." I've just never seen it. I have an intense dislike of the ancient alien concept.
Oh, that was my next
Uh,
question.
I'm, I think at its base, it's racist because the whole thing about ancient aliens is that ancient humans, ancient people, especially ancient dark-skinned people, couldn't possibly have been smart enough to build a pyramid or build a monument or build any of the incredible structures that remain from the ancient world. It had to have been, little gray, whitish aliens from another planet. I think it's intensely anti-human, as well as being racist. I think there is literally no evidence for any of it. And But there are people out there making a lot of money off of it, and who will swear up and down they saw flying saucers or they were abducted by aliens or whatever. But I have just never ever seen any evidence for it. And as a historian, as a trained historian, my first question is always, where's the evidence? And I've never seen any.
And is that what it's all about? Is this some PT Barnum stuff? Is it all about the money, the moolah?
Well, for some people, certainly it is. And I think, because I've talked to them, I think there are people out there who genuinely, seriously think they saw Bigfoot or the Jersey Devil or a flying saucer, and they're not lying, and they're not trying to hoax. They really believe they saw something. And I just don't think they saw what they think they saw. And so I think it runs the gamut. There are people who are genuine in their belief that they encountered one of these things. And I also think there's plenty of people who are out there who are laughing all the way to the bank.
Yes, certainly. I know that it's a big industry. You have, first off, you could write a book. You could write tons of books. You could do speaking tours. And some of these people, they charge 70, 80, $200 just to watch them speak and basically, tell you the same stuff that's in their book. But they get that fame. People want to meet them, et cetera, et cetera. What do you feel like we would be better off without UFOs and the UFO community and these people going around that are convincing us that aliens created us?
Well, the idea of talking about how the only way human civilization could have come into being is by getting jump started from uh, some extraterrestrial source, I think that is very problematic. And I've said this before at talks, and I've written about it, and I've said it on podcasts and on TV, that I don't think people should stop looking for UFOs. I don't think people should stop looking for Bigfoot. I don't think people should stop looking for any sort of these things that we sort of lump under the paranormal. There is the whole history of science is one long story of people starting off searching for some strange, unusual thing and not finding it, but discovering some other aspect of how the universe works. The sciences of biology, for example, start off as monster hunters. People like Lucretius and Aristotle and Pliny, they wrote books about monsters. I have some original medieval and early modern books on monsters in my collection. And they were out looking for these things and they didn't find them. But what they did was they found out how biology works. They found out how life on Earth operates. Charles Darwin was interested in monstrous creatures. And so the idea that studying these kind of outrageous or fringe ideas, although the people in the ancient world didn't exactly see them as fringe, they saw them as mainstream thinking. In their pursuit of these unusual topics, they invented biology and ornithology and geology. And so I don't have a problem with people out there looking for Bigfoot. One of the problems I have is that in all of this looking for Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever you want to call these anomalous primates, the pursuers of these creatures haven't really yet added to our knowledge of science that much. I think that's the drawback. That's the thing they've kind of failed at. You have all these people running around the woods looking for these creatures. They tend to be sort of focused on finding the beast, throwing a net over the beast. And they could be discovering things about how life in forests works, or how animal life behaves in mountainous, snowy environments. That unfortunately just hasn't really happened. Certainly not from self-styled cryptozoologists.
Yeah, I have an experience like that. I was one of these people that was really questioning a lot of what they say about climate change and the world, the environment being destroyed. And I got really into fishing. And I went and I saw what was happening to the salmon and their
Hmm.
spawning beds and stuff like that. It really changed my perspective because it was right in front of me, seeing the damage that was being done by
Sure.
humans to the
Hmm.
environment. It really kind of hurt me deep down, and it changed me because it's undeniable what man can do to his own environment if he just sticks a log or a rock in the way of these fish that are trying to spawn. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean the evidence is the scientific evidence is really overwhelming that climate change is real, and that human agency is part of that. There's a natural aspect to climate change, but there has been an acceleration to it since humans began, particularly with the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th century. We have really adversely affected the environment.
How do you feel about where we're at now? Are we in trouble?
Oh, of course we are. We're in huge trouble.
Are you personally
I
kind of
hate to
worried
laugh
about it?
about that because we're stupidly in trouble, and there are good people out there working to try to reverse these effects and to bring this knowledge to people. Uh, but then there are people who are making too much money off of polluting the world and don't want to stop because if they stop, they think their money income will stop as well.
Brian, in your opinion, being a person that is as well educated and has been been in as many debates as you have been, what is your idea of the best government system? What would you say would be the best out of everything that we've looked at, democracy, socialism, blah blah blah, or maybe something else entirely? What is your opinion on that?
Well, the democracy obviously is the way we want to go. Monarchy, despotism, dictatorships is we know from history these are horrible things. Democracy, as Winston Churchill once said, democracy is not the best system we have, or is not the perfect system, but it's the best one we have so far. And so we have to be very careful that we hold on to it. And there's a lot of people screaming about socialism, this socialism, that. My experience is that 9 out of the 10 people who go on about socialism don't really know what it is. They just think it's bad. If you've driven on a public highway today, if you went to a public school, if you get sick from this virus and you have to go to a public hospital, guess what? You're a socialist because those are all things that came out from socialism. Unemployment insurance, Medicaid, Social Security, banking insurance. These are all things that come out of the socialist mindset. And socialism is not the same as communism. Communism is a dictatorial system. Socialism isn't.
Being somebody, I'm dying to ask this. Being somebody that works at a college, I always hear the accusation, oh, they're at the colleges, they're programming our kids to be socialists. Is there any truth to that, Brian?
I get this all the time, and like 9 out of the 10 people who tell you socialism is bad don't know what socialism is. Probably 10 out of the 10 people who tell you that universities are somehow some kind of hotbed of lefty liberal thinking are people who've never gone to college,
That sounds about
who
right.
have no idea what goes on. I would, and I talked about this. I have a lot of friends who are professors around the world, and this whole idea that we're somehow indoctrinating students is laughable. We would be lucky. We consider ourselves lucky if they just do the assigned reading every semester, let alone indoctrination. Uh, you
That's a
know,
good
if, if,
point.
if you know, if I get a student who raises their hand and asks a question because they've done the reading, I'm like, thank God, I made my money for the day. So this whole notion of universities being this sort of uh, devil's lair of horrible, terrible people doing horrible, awful things to our children is just nonsense.
And Brian, what do you think of the teachers in general? Are most of them good like yourself, or do some of them have some work to do on the way they teach? How do you feel about the current state of teachers and teaching?
Well, I do magic. Nobody does what I do. I'm really good at this, but I have my colleagues here at Kean in the Department of History are all fantastic. I know very few university professors who are really bad at their job. They're all just fantastic. They all care a great deal about what they're doing and about their responsibility to their students and to their society. That's not the problem. For faculty members are not the problem. They're the solution. Most administrators, most politicians, if they would just get out of our way and let us do our job, the world would be a lot better off.
So it's really a problem of just the system isn't quite meeting what our kids needs.
Well, there's no such thing as a perfect system. There's always flaws in everything. But you do your best. You struggle along. You improve where you can. We're constantly doing things where we try to find out did this textbook work this semester? Maybe we should use a different textbook next semester. Should I modify the projects I gave? Did I give too many projects? Did I give not enough? Should I have asked the students to research in this direction rather than that direction? So it's a system where you're constantly trying to improve. You're constantly looking for ways to do a better job because we have a responsibility to our students and we take it very seriously. I like to make jokes about what I do in class, and I like to have a good time in class, and tell jokes and recite song lyrics and poetry from the romantic poets. But ultimately, I and all of my colleagues are extremely serious about what we're doing. We take our job seriously, and we try to do it the best we can because we know that we are affecting the world that way. We would like to affect it in a positive way.
You seem like a person that is optimistic overall.
Yeah, I mean, I am. My students make me feel optimistic. Sometimes they infuriate me when they don't read the syllabus. But I am generally this generation. I've been teaching at Kean. This is my 12th year. I taught at a small engineering college in Manhattan for 7 years before that, and I was an adjunct for years. So I've been doing this a long time, and my students do give me great hope for the future. What else can I do? I mean, what other options do I have but to be optimistic?
Well, that's really refreshing hearing because it seems like a lot of people in general have kind of a bad attitude about science and learning. They don't really realize how fun it can be if you do it right.
Yeah, I mean, I love this job. I get up in the morning. I can't wait to go see my students. I can't wait to go into the archive. I travel around the world, going to archives and doing research and thwarting evildoers. It's the greatest job in the world. I had a number of careers before I was able to obtain this one that I always wanted. And I like to feel like I'm doing something a bit positive. And again, all my colleagues, no matter where they are, feel the same way. We feel that it's important. And I see these students. I saw online. There's this thing that people like to get into now about how, oh, millennials, they're lazy and all they want to do is, they never really struggled or anything like that. And I said to somebody once, hey, listen, Chief, I have millennial students in my classes who are combat vets, who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. What unit did you serve in? Uh, you know, so I do have hope for the future. That there, as bad as it gets, we can at some point we can fix it. And again, what choice do I have but to think that way?
Seems like it's kind of a generational thing too, because I remember when I was a kid, my parents, everybody'd say, "Oh, this generation, they're so wild and out of control." And now I'm getting older, and they're saying it about the kids nowadays, and putting down their music, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like maybe that's just something that happens when we get old. We just have to crap all over the young people and their music.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a standard thing. You kids these days. I got it when I was a kid. My father got it when he was a kid from his father. I think that's just sort of the way of the world. But that's I'm not sure what we can do about that.
Okay, and I want to get off the topic of school and stuff a little bit. I wanted to ask you this. We kind of talked about some of these people going around talking about UFOs and stuff like this. And I'm wondering if this, what I'm about to talk about, is a little bit more dangerous, or what your opinions are on this. What about these people that say 9/11 was an inside job and we have everything to fear from our own government or some sort of Illuminati network out there?
Well, first off, there's no evidence that 9/11 was an inside job. Um, I don't, as much as I dislike George Bush, I don't think he was responsible for that. I think he was responsible for the terrible way he reacted to it. But I don't. I spent time working for Uncle Sam, and one of the things that suggests to me that 9/11 was not an inside job was that this was not something that was pulled off by a couple of people. There was not like a couple of guys could sneak into the World Trade Center and wire the whole thing for demolition without anyone seeing them. This would have taken hundreds and hundreds of people, and within the government and elsewhere. And I find it hard to believe that of all these people who supposedly was in on this, not one of them in all these years has come forward and say, I was involved in this thing. I helped wire the demolition charges in the World Trade Center. I thought it was a good idea at the time, but now I feel terrible about it and I want to confess. That's never happened. I think 9/11 happened just the way everyone thinks it happened. Some very bad people decided to do a very bad thing, and flew planes into buildings. Um, I was in Manhattan on 9/11. In fact, I was starting a new job on September 11th. The engineering school I taught at. My first day was September 11th, 2001. I was on the New Jersey Transit train heading through the Meadowlands into Manhattan, watching this out the window. And I don't really want to go through that again. And so I think it does us all a real disservice. This whole, oh, the government's out to get us. We should be wary of the government. We should force the government to do their job. We should force the government to spend our taxes wisely. But that doesn't mean we should get rid of the government. One of the things I tell people is, you want to know what a world without government is like? Study the Middle Ages. Look at medieval Europe. That was a world without a government. That was a world with plagues coming through every 5 minutes, with a infant mortality rate that was through the roof, no medical care, no dental. Boy, you would never want to have seen a medieval person's teeth. Horrible sanitation, terrible living conditions. If somebody robbed you, you had no one to turn to. That's what a world without government is. And so I'm all for government. And this is going to sound strange. I like paying my taxes because I know when I pay my taxes, I get a road to drive on. My taxes make it so that when I use my toilet and I flush it, all that stuff goes away. That's a result of government. And so I'm not anti-government. I'm anti-bad government. I think we should force our government, our elected officials, to do their job properly. But this whole thing that the government's out to get us it's just nonsense.
And I did want to circle back a little bit to what you were talking about earlier in terms of there being racism in a lot of these things that we look at, like ancient aliens. But what about history in general? Has history been whitewashed?
No, we know everything. Just because the guys who putting a YouTube channel together about conspiracies doesn't know this doesn't mean we don't know it. Historians, there is basically no inch of the human experience that doesn't have a community of historians or archaeologists or anthropologists or linguists who are studying it in excruciating detail. It always I'm involved with some people online on Twitter who are sort of activist scholars who are really bothered by this trend of uh, this we discovered this thing and it baffles historians. Nothing baffles historians. We know all about it. We know who built the pyramids. There really isn't any question about it. I do this thing. I teach our world history class at Kean, and when we get to doing the classical world, the ancient world, I have this bit that I do when we start talking about the Egyptians. I say, okay, I very dramatically, I close the door of the classroom and I say, I don't want anybody outside class to hear this, what I'm about to tell you, because it's explosive information. And the students kind of lean forward, I'm going to tell you who built the pyramids, who really, really built the pyramids. And I give it a little dramatic pause, and they're all like ready to write down because they've been watching these shows on TV. And I say, the ancient pyramids or the pyramids of ancient Egypt were built by the ancient Egyptians. And then this sort of wave of disappointment comes over them. And I say, look, we know there really is no mystery. We know who built the pyramids. We know who built, we know who did all this stuff. There occasionally we come across new things that we haven't seen before, but we eventually work it out. And so no, the Egyptians did not have electric light bulbs. The Maya were not flying airplanes. They were smart people. They figured out how to do all this stuff. They didn't need ancient aliens with their anti-gravity machines. They wanted to do something. They sat down and they figured it out. Why do you have these buildings in all these ancient civilizations like Egypt and Mesoamerica and Southeast Asia and in China building pyramids? Oh man, that means the ancient aliens showed them all how to build. No, that's because if you're going to build a giant monumental building, the most stable form to make it in is a pyramid. That way they don't fall over. You don't want your building to fall over, right? And building a giant sphere is beyond you technically. And a cube also has technological problems with pressure building on top and pushing it down. A pyramid is the perfect shape to build a giant building out of, especially if you don't have concrete, if you don't have giant cranes to lift things. Ancient people were just as smart as we were. And they wanted to do something, and they sat down and they figured it out. And very often they wrote it down. We have huge amounts of the written record of these ancient people explaining, we built this pyramid, this is how we built it. And so it really isn't that much of a mystery.
Yeah, you would think that if it was aliens, they would either make it look like the Empire State Building or maybe actually put it in space like a Death Star.
Yeah, if you want to convince me that ancient aliens built any of these things, show me a single alien screw. That's all. A single alien-made screw, and I'll be convinced. Because if the aliens did come here, they left their garbage behind. One of the things that historians and archaeologists and anthropologists understand about the human condition is we human beings leave huge amounts of garbage behind us. It's the thing we make the most of, is garbage. And we have garbage heaps from the Neanderthals. So we know what kind of stuff they threw away. So if ancient aliens came here with their fancy schmancy, space age technology, there'd be bits of metal, there'd be screws and bolts and, other, crap that they left behind. They couldn't possibly clean it all up. And by now we would have found it. And we simply have not found an actual piece of alien technology.
Here's my whole thing on aliens, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. the whole idea of like a Star Trek or a Star Wars situation with all these different aliens living on different planets and stuff like that, it sounds awesome. I mean, it's super fun and interesting, but we just haven't found anything. It just seems to be so empty out there. What do you think of that? Is it just empty out there?
Well, my feeling, and this is based on absolutely no evidence, is that the universe, as we understand it today, is enormously huge. It's probably even bigger than we think it is, and we know there are billions and billions of stars and galaxies and planets. The idea that in all of that space there isn't at least one other sentient race, I find that kind of hard to believe. There are probably quite a few of them out there. Um, but that's a separate question from have they ever come here? And the evidence that they've ever come here, there just isn't any. Maybe the universe is just so huge that none of the other um, ancient races or alien races, extraterrestrial races who have the ability of space flight have ever gotten to where we are. Astronomers are pretty sure that our little solar system here is kind of way off in a sort of a corner of the universe. And so we may just be so far off the beaten path that nobody has managed to come by yet. But we'll find out maybe someday.
And I gotta ask, should we be afraid of what they might be?
Well, that's what people always want to know. Well, if aliens come, should be worried about it. I'm not sure, but if we go by human history, there are myriad cases where a technologically advanced civilization has encountered a civilization not as technically advanced, and it usually doesn't go well for the lesser technological civilization. So if somebody from another planet or another galaxy has the technology to be able to come here, they're pretty much can do whatever they want with us, and there really wouldn't be much we could do about it. So we better hope that they're nice.
Yeah, definitely. They very well might be peaceful and much wiser than us, or they might be aggressive, like these Klingons from Star Trek, or some of these reptilians you hear about from ufology.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an exobiologist, but I got to figure that if evolution is a constant throughout the universe, like gravity, um, sentient life from outside our world probably doesn't look anything like us. It's probably so different that we wouldn't even recognize it. It probably would not just look like a human with some, plastic body parts stuck on.
Do people need to blame some kind of Illuminati or devil or some mysterious thing for their personal problems?
It certainly seems to be. We humans love to scapegoat. Uh, we can't understand why things go wrong. There must be some secret organization out there. There must be the Illuminati or what's the other one? The one that has the camp. The name just flew right out of my head. Um, there must be these secret machinations going on under the surface that are doing these things to us. I don't believe in any of them because, again, I've never seen any evidence for it.
I did want to ask you about another social political topic. I want to ask you, and purely because it's just such a hot topic in our country and our world in general, I want to ask you about the Second Amendment and gun control. For it, against it, somewhere in
Hmm.
between, maybe.
Well, it's probably the most misunderstood part of our Constitution. And the people who are big into, I mean, when I was in the service, I carried a pistol as part of my job. I fired in my role as a soldier. I fired basically every sort of small arm. I've got a old dress uniform floating around here somewhere with a chest full of qualification badges on it. Um, the most people don't really understand what the Second Amendment is saying, or the context in which it was written. The Constitution was written at a time when America had just come out of a war for its independence. And a lot of the stuff in the Constitution was put in there because of what they had gone through during the Revolution. Like, for example, there's a thing in the Constitution that people often don't even mention about quartering. You can't allow the government can't allow troops to live in your house. And I have students when we talk about the Constitution will look at that and say, "Where did that even come from? Why?" And I say, "Well, that's because." One of the things which led to the revolution was the British Empire was forcing colonists to house and feed British troops. And so when the Constitution was written, they said, we're not going to allow the government to do that sort of thing anymore. And so, excuse me. And so the Second Amendment was all about having a well-regulated militia. It didn't mean any jackass who wanted one should be able to have a machine gun under his pillow. And the idea was that as a sovereign nation, the United States, like any other sovereign nation, had a right to protect itself from the outside, and that meant it was allowed to have a well-regulated militia, in other words, an army. And so the military were allowed to have firearms. It didn't say anything about civilians. And even if you sort of somehow manage to talk your way around that, you still have that awful phrase, well-regulated, which means gun laws. And so people, oh, you shouldn't have the Constitution says we have gun. Yeah, the Constitution also says you have to have gun laws. And so, unfortunately, the Constitution is written in the 1780s and 1790s, and it uses a kind of flowery language that is unfamiliar to our ears today. And so, I think they could have been a little more concrete on this. And I think that sort of vagueness of the wording gets us in a lot of trouble. But I have, like I said, I spent a lot of years in the military. I carried all sorts of firearms, fired all sorts of firearms. The minute I left the military, I've never owned a gun as a civilian. Didn't own one then. I don't own one now. And someone recently asked me, "Oh, why don't you own a gun?" Because I'm an adult. I'm not a terrified child. And that gets people mad, you know. So I can almost hear the hate mail being written right now as I speak. But I think we're better off with less firearms rather than more.
And that brings me to the next extremely politically motivated question. What do you think of our president, Donald Trump?
I don't care for Mr. Trump. I think he's a terrible president. I don't think he knows much about anything. He doesn't seem, people here in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut metropolitan area, we've known about this guy since the early 80s, and people didn't like him back then either for the same reasons people don't like him now. He doesn't seem like the smartest guy in the world. He seems a little self-centered, and I don't think he's a very good president.
Okay, fair enough. And I really wanted to ask you this question because I actually do like Vikings. I think it's a fun show. Why do you hate it?
Don't like what?
The show Vikings.
Oh, the historical series?
Yes.
I admittedly the only aspects of it I've ever seen is watching it on bits and pieces on YouTube, and it just seems like every 3 minutes somebody gets hit in the head with an axe.
Pretty much.
And so sometimes TV shows grab your attention, sometimes they don't, and it just never grabbed my attention.
Yeah, even me, I'm not a huge historian or anything like that, but even I noticed some things about that show that are obviously just kind of done to get that modern crowd. A lot of it's almost like yeah. And I know
well, it's not a documentary, it's a TV show.
And that does beg another question, Brian. What is your favorite era in all of history?
Right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why would I want to live in the past? Terrible dental. Plagues. Plagues that make what we go through today seem like nothing. Constant wars, terrible food, bad sanitation, no education system. Why would I want that? I kind of like where we are now. I mean, I don't mind living. We have a lot of great stuff. We have some bad stuff going on right now, but for the most part, we have a lot of terrific stuff. And we'll get better politicians. We dump the old ones. We get better ones. That's part of the cycle. That's part of democracy. I'd rather have a bad president than a bad dictator. So why would I want to live in the past? Which sounds funny for a historian to say.
No, that does make sense. I mean, you're not going to have toilet paper. You're not going to live as long. Maybe it'd be fun to be like Doctor Who, where you can kind of visit whenever you want. But to be permanently stuck there, that'd be tough.
Yeah.
How
But,
about,
he never gets sick. And
okay, let's say that we can't use the modern age and we can't use 100 years ago. What time would you pick then?
well, again, it's there's I, I really don't know what time I would want to go back to because they were all pretty horrible.
Okay, fair enough.
At least I know the horrors of today.
No, I totally get it. I mean, you hear about like somebody like Abe Lincoln, like all of his sons die, and it just sounds so depressing. He seemed like a very sad man, maybe
Hmm.
because he sort of knew how hard it was back then, and he kind of saw what was going on. But during your debates and times when you kind of get into it with people that believe in these strange things, has anybody ever really kind of pressed you? Has anybody ever earned your respect debating you? Has anybody ever like won a debate or at least given you a run for your money?
Well, I don't really debate people. I don't like debates. Um, Debates aren't really about arguing points. Debates are about making the other person look foolish. So I never debate. I get people asking me questions, when I give talks and things, and students, of course, they're always asking stuff. Um, but no, I don't really care for the whole debate format. I think it's a sucker's game.
That's an interesting take. I do see what you mean, though. It does seem like even I've argued with people on Twitter and stuff like that. It always descends into this name calling and ridiculing, and it's not fun at that point, and it feels very childish, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. That you get a few. Uh, I've had some actually very interesting conversation with people who disagree with me or who I disagree with on Twitter that ended sort of amicably. But usually it sort of you know descends to them calling me names, and I just okay, well we're done. I'll talk with someone all day long if you want, but as soon as you start cursing me, I don't need that crap.
Yeah, exactly. As far as your work that you've done, which one of your books is your favorite?
Oh, no one's ever asked me that. They're all my children. Um, I was very happy with. Um, well, I've never really not been happy with any of the things I've done. Uh, I really liked the way the Sasquatch book came out. I really liked the Jersey Devil book. The thing I'm working on right now is coming along rather nicely. I'm hoping that'll turn out well. Uh, I've got a peer review article coming out in June about this really interesting woman named Nellie Horsford who was lived in the late 19th, early 20th century, sort of a forgotten amateur archaeologist who believed that Leif Erikson discovered America, and which is part of this larger book that I'm working on. So yeah, I mean, I like them all. I think they all really have their good points that I'm really happy with. I'm not really uh, none of my work I look at and I say, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. You know, I'm just gonna go buy up all the copies and get rid of them. I've been lucky in not having that problem.
Yeah, that's something that you're talking earlier about some people having this insecurity, and you hear about that a lot with people that perform and people that do great things. Like I know Charlie Chaplin was like that. Like he'd go back in his dressing room and he'd really beat himself up if he didn't get like the best performance and get everybody
Mhm.
laughing and loving him. You don't seem like that. You seem like you could care less. You could not care less what
Yeah,
people
I
think.
really could. I mean, I don't care less. If people write to me and say, uh, if 10 people write to me and say, I just read your Jersey Devil book and I really liked it, I really enjoyed it. I just had someone the other day write to me and say, I just read your Jersey Devil book and it was really inspiring to me. And I want to go out and find out everything I can about, Native American history. And that's always great. It's always great to hear when somebody comes up to you and says, your book changed my life or something like that. Uh, and you get 10 of those, and then there's the one person who writes to you and says, "Oh, you suck, man." Uh, and I'll admit that makes you feel bad if somebody writes a bad review or makes some weird comment about you. But my approach to my writing has always been, if you ask writers, they'll all probably tell you something a little bit different about their audience. They'll say, "Well, I write for my audience, and my audience wants to see this, or my audience wants to see that, and I write so that my audience understands this or that that I'm writing." I've always been an incredibly selfish, self-centered guy since I was a kid, and so when I write, my audience is me. Maybe my partner. I want her to like everything I write. But basically, if I'm happy with what I've written, that's I've accomplished what I set out to do. If I can go back and read my own work and say, that's not too bad. That's kind of a nice little, turn of phrase you used here, and I understand what you were talking about. That's basically it. And if people like it when they read it, that's fantastic. If they don't, it hurts a little bit, but so what?
What I think is interesting is, we were talking about people like, releasing these books and their motivations and stuff like that, and how it can actually get people to pay a little bit more attention to science and explore things. What's really neat to me is you could write a book about Sasquatch and have some success. And you can write a book about how Sasquatch is a bunch of bullshit and still have some success. That makes it all the more interesting for somebody like me.
Yeah, well, when I wrote the when I wrote the Sasquatch book, it's essentially a biography of Grover Krantz. And as a historian, I always start off. I don't take a position one way or another. I am neither pro nor anti cryptozoology. And I just wanted to tell the story about this group of people who I thought were really fascinating for a whole bunch of different reasons. And I wanted to tell what I thought was of an interesting story about some interesting people. And I was just going to do what historians do. I dove headfirst into the archival material, and whatever came out, that's what came out. And the people who look good not because I wanted to make them look good, but because the primary sources make them look good. And the people who don't come off that well, not because I didn't want them to, but because that's what the material shows. When I was writing the Sasquatch book, I was contacting all these people in the field, and I contacted a number of people, big names who I won't mention now, but if you're sort of a Bigfoot person, you would recognize their names. And I said, I'm working on this. I'm working on this book. Can I, pick your brain? Can you share some of your materials with me? And at first, they were all, very excited. We're so happy that a real historian is finally going to do this and tell our story. And I'll show you this and I'll show you that. And then when the book was going to be published, it's a standard thing. If you use people's material that's not in the public domain, you have to get their permission. And so the publisher sent out these sort of form letters to all these people saying, we're about to publish this book, and you're mentioned in it, and can you just sign this release form so that we can mention you and mention the material that he used. And most people wrote right back and said, yeah, sure, looking forward to it. But the problem was in this form letter, it says what the book's title is going to be. And as soon as a number of people saw Crackpots and Eggheads, they just freaked out. And they pulled their permissions and they wrote me nasty letters. I have a wonderfully testy letter from a very big person in the field, an iconic person from the field of Bigfoot studies, who originally was going to let me use material, and then when he found out what the title was, pulled it up, and then sent me this angry letter saying I was a horrible person and how could I do this, and I was stabbing him in the back and yada yada yada. And so I didn't use some of his material, but I wrote to people. I said, look, I didn't make that term up. I got crackpots and eggheads from the Bigfoot community. Some of these famous guys, they used it to describe each other. I remember when I was doing the research, going through the archives and looking at these letters that, other than the people who sent them and the people who received them, I'm the only person who's ever actually looked at them. I started coming across these terms, and the first time I saw crackpots and eggheads, I said, jackpot! I got my book title right there. And so I just used an expression that the Bigfoot people were using themselves. So if you're mad about this, don't be mad at me. Be mad at the guys who used them. But that I've had Bigfoot people who wrote to me and said, this is the best book ever written on the topic. I've had Bigfoot people write to me and say, you're a horrible, terrible human being, and how could you do this? You're a muckraker, and you. And so it's you can't worry, or at least I don't worry about what people are going to say. I'm going to write this thing the way I think it is most accurate and most honest. And if people like it, they like it. And if they don't, they don't.
I have a question about Bigfoot. Since the Native Americans believe in Bigfoot, doesn't that make it true?
There are legends out of Native American tradition about sort of Bigfooty like creatures. Um, but their mythology is a mythology, just like our mythology is a mythology. And again, uh, that's what they believed. I've seen even less evidence for Bigfoot than I have for UFOs. So someday we might find out that Bigfoot is real, and if it is, I'll say, well, look at that, I was wrong. All this time there really is a Bigfoot, but I've never seen any evidence of it. Um, so mythology can be a difficult area to get into because you try to walk this line between trying not to insult people, but to try to look at the underlying origins of their belief systems.
And this is another one of those questions I just have to ask. I'm not going to ask the question itself because that's too easy. But what I'm going to ask is, in this modern day and age, how is it that people would actually become convinced that the earth is flat?
When you find out, let me know.
I haven't quite deciphered that one off. I guess that goes
Yeah,
into
I
the
have
beliefs.
I
Huh?
have no idea. You know, People in ancient India knew the Earth was round. The Babylonians knew the Earth was round. The Greeks, the Romans knew the Earth was round. Everybody's known the Earth was round. Um, Christopher Columbus knew the Earth was round. The myth about Columbus was afraid he'd fall off that's a complete myth, a nonsensical myth. Pretty much learned people anywhere on Earth, all the way back to our earliest intellectual days, knew the Earth was a sphere and not a flat plate. If you look at flat Earth theory, you'll start coming across a lot of conspiracy theory. You'll start coming across a lot of religious fundamentalism, anti-science, anti-evolution. So yeah, I don't know how you can possibly believe that.
Out of all these different topics, all these different fringe, paranormal, supernatural, conspiracy, mythical monster topics, which one of them do you find to be the most disturbing or annoying, or the most cringeworthy to you personally?
I guess anti-vaccination is pretty dangerous.
Hmm, that's an interesting one.
I usually don't. I get yelled at by anti-vaxxers all the time. I wrote a op-ed piece a few years ago about why there's no evidence that vaccinations are bad. That you probably I'm a philosophical doctor. I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't give out medical advice. But I wrote this op-ed piece about how we're getting a little crazy about this vaccination thing. Vaccinations are good. Vaccinations are one of the greatest in discoveries in the history of medicine. And so I got huge amounts of hate mail over that from people say no, vaccinations cause autism. And I knew some people who had an autistic child who, when they read that, haven't talked to me since because of that. And I don't think. As far as I can tell, I don't think if you believe in Bigfoot, we really have much to, that's not really going to turn the world upside down or injure anyone. But I think anti-vaccination is a real problem because it doesn't affect just the individual; it affects everybody around us. We're sort of learning this now with this coronavirus thing, that you can very easily spread disease, and that the reason that measles and whooping cough and polio and smallpox ravaged the Earth's population was because we didn't have vaccinations for it. And once we got the vaccinations for it, a lot of those diseases basically disappeared, but are now beginning to reappear because people are not getting vaccinated. And so that, I think, is one of these fringe ideas that poses a real threat to our society.
Are people that believe in these nutty things, are they less intelligent or just misguided?
I think it's more fear. I think people genuinely want their kids to be safe. I don't have kids, but if I had a kid, I'd want them to be safe. Um, and if you read, some of this literature that tells you that vaccinations are bad for you, I guess for some people it's a fairly easy transition to say, well, I'm not going to get my kids vaccinated then.
And Brian, we are coming to the end of the interview. I do thank you for giving me so much of your time, but I did want to ask you about yourself personally, just a little bit. Besides being into history and refuting some of this wild, crazy stuff about monsters and stuff like that, what do you like to do for fun? Like, do you have any hobbies that you would like
I
to
do
share?
this. This is what I do for fun.
Just go on podcasts.
No, this is my life as a historian is my life.
Well, you
I love
seem
it. I
very
love
passionate
writing.
about it. I could say that
I love
much.
writing. I love reading books. I've got a home library. My partner, Dr. Knox, and I have a home library. We love traveling to archives, and that's one of for me personally, the worst thing about this coronavirus thing is we were both scheduled to speak at like a half a dozen conferences this summer, and they've all been canceled because a lot of them are out, outside the U.S. And so I'm not going to get to do that traveling. We're not going to get to do that traveling this summer. And I just, I love what I do. I When I was a kid, I used to build plastic models, and a couple of years ago, I decided, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should get myself a little hobby and start building plastic models again. And so I decided to get a model of the tank that I served on in the Army. I said, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll build this thing and I'll paint it up to look like it was when I was on it. And so I got all excited, and I got one, and I got some parts and some paints and things, and I started building it. I got about halfway through, and I said, "What the hell's wrong with me? Why am I doing this? Why am I wasting my time with this?" And so I put it all back in the box, and I put it on the shelf, and it sat there for the last 3 years, and you know. Uh, so I just love doing this. I love doing research. I love reading original material. I love being the person. I love the fact that I was the first person to read Grover Krantz's Private Mail. A lot of these Bigfoot people, they never saw any of this stuff until they read my book that I built based upon looking at his letters and his notebooks and his marginalia and his private photo collection. He kept this I found in his material. He kept this little black and white photograph. It took me a while to figure out what it was. I had to look at it with a magnifying glass. He kept this little black and white photograph of a mouse's entrails, and he kept it in his wallet most of his adult life. And I have
That's
no
wow.
idea why.
Yeah, that is I wow. That's interesting
You know, it's stuff
indeed.
like that. Just, you know, I sit there and I say, God, I love this job. Uh, you know,
You know what's funny? You don't
um,
have to be like paranormal. You don't have to be supernatural. You don't have to be fringe to be interesting.
I'm
Sometimes,
sorry.
oh, I was just thinking like, something that's interesting about your books, you're coming from the counter perspective, but really, I think what we can learn from this is you don't need ghosts and goblins and dragons and Bigfoots and stuff like that to be interesting, really, do we?
No, no, I think, you know, I think life is pretty interesting. I always, I always, if we go to the movies and it's based on some sort of historical thing, I hate going to those movies because I'm going to sit there the whole time and I'm going to say that's wrong, and they never said this, and that's the wrong color for that thing, you know, and I just ruin it for everybody, and everybody gets mad, you know. But the saying I like to use is, "It's all fun and games until the historian shows up."
And like I said, Brian, we are coming to the end of the interview, but I do like to do one thing each and every show is just open things up a little bit for you one more time. If you'd like to go ahead and jump on the soapbox one more time and say whatever you'd like to say to my audience out there, feel free to do that. And if you'd like to follow that up with anything and everything that you would like to plug, feel free to do that as well.
Okay, well, I am. My name is Dr. Brian Regal. I'm an associate professor for the history of science, technology, and medicine at Kean University, a wonderful, terrific, great liberal arts university here in New Jersey. If you want to study the history of science, technology, and medicine, I also teach courses on alchemy and pseudoscience. So if you want to come study with me, I'm happy to do that. And I think if you're interested in these areas, by all means, follow them up. Do the reading, find out how scholars work, find out how historians trace archives, because that's where the information is. If you think that there were flying saucers kept at Area 51, there will be government records somewhere to show that. There will be records about the cooks who had to cook the food to feed the guards. There will be a mess sergeant's log. There'll be a motor sergeant's log detailing the repair to the tow truck that dragged the flying saucer around. All that material will be somewhere in the archive. That's how you'll prove that flying saucers are real. And so if you think Bigfoot is real, by all means go out, but find something out, take a class in biology, take a class in animal mechanics, in zoology. If you want to find out why people believe in ghosts, take a course in theology, take a course in psychology, learn the scholarly aspect of this, and by all means go and study it, because you might find out something about the universe that we didn't know before, and that will make it all worth it. And
Awesome.
my most recent book is The Secret History of the Jersey Devil, written with my co-author, Frank J. Esposito. The book before that is Searching for Sasquatch, Crackpots, Eggheads, and Cryptozoology. And I got a bunch of other stuff there. If you want to go on my university webpage, just type my name into Google, and my Kean University webpage will come up, and you can find tons of my op-eds and articles and things free for the download. You can look at my classes and look at the syllabus and the reading list. It's all there free of charge. And follow me on Twitter. My Twitter feed is at Tarbosaurus. And so you can go online and yell at me for saying that UFOs aren't real, and we can talk about it.
Well, this show's been on since 2012, and Brian, you're the first person that I define as a skeptic that has come on this show. So very refreshing, very different than what we usually do here. I do thank you very much for your time, and I'd love to talk to you again when you get around to releasing the next book, or really whenever you would like to talk again.
Sure. Okay.
All
It's
right.
been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. Even though we come from different viewpoints, you are very fun to talk to. You have a great attitude, and I'm walking away from this with a good buzz. So I appreciate that once again.
Thanks. Let me tell you, I am delightful. I am a delightful guy,
You are delightful.
and nobody knows more about this stuff than I do.
Well, since we first got on air and you hit me with that joke, I said, you know what, this guy's got to be a great teacher.
Now, did you know the quotation I made? You know where it's from?
No.
It's from the rhyme. Really? It's from the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, yet never a drop to drink.
Ah, so eloquently put. Well, I do appreciate your eloquence, Brian. I appreciate you because you are very well spoken and very intelligent, and you bring a lot to the table. And I will.
That's what my mom told me.
I will talk to you next time, my friend.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, that was Brian. A lot of fun with that. Let me just do. All right. And right here, what's funny is that he was really an interesting guy. And I was thinking that, boy, this was going to be tough. He's a skeptic. It's going to be tough to get through. But that really could not have been any easier to get through. He was very pleasant. He was very fun to talk to. I had a good time. And I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are going to be possibly getting a little mad. Like, hey, Daniel, why didn't you stick up for the cause? Why didn't you go blow for blow or debate him? And again, I've explained this before. This show is like other shows in the sense that we don't invite people on here to give them a bad time or attack them. I don't invite people on here to, argue and have a bad time and, have a terrible experience. That's not really any fun. I mean, it's fun to get mad sometimes or get mad at callers and people like that. But when I invite somebody on the show, I want them to have a good experience. And that means not bringing them on here just to be a jerk, so to speak. Now with Brian, he probably could have handled it. I probably could have went at him and we might have had a good time. But I just don't really handle things that way because I would rather spend my time getting to know somebody rather than it being all weird and uncomfortable and then possibly hanging up. So that's my take on that. And I thought it would be refreshing talking about something a little bit different because you hear these comments like, Daniel, you believe in everything. This show, it just, it's so down the rabbit hole, you just get lost. Well, no one can say that anymore because we just brought on one of the world's greatest skeptics and we had an hour and a half long conversation with him and it went fine. So nobody can talk any smack now, can they? No, they cannot. We're going to go to break. I'll come back. I still got a lot to talk about and we will talk again very soon.
Winter's coming.
The king has returned from the broken ruins of Babylon. This is the end of days.
and welcome back to These Last Days. I am your host with the most, Daniel, coming at you all the way from that beautiful, shimmering, glistening, sparkling Emerald City. Here in the itty-gritty Washington State, where we bring that hate and we try not to impregnate so we don't have to pay that child support. I'm trying to build a fort. Sorry, just doing a little freestyling. How you guys fucking doing? What'd you think of that interview? Woo! Shit. Growing a beard. It's the worst beard ever. Makes me look like some kind of sick Satanist, doesn't it? I got the little Satan spot right here. Ugh. Ugh. You know, I've been going through a lot of changes lately. Ugh. I really hate to mention all of them because a lot of you out there probably aren't going to like that. I'm always changing. The people that like the old Daniel, they might not like the new Daniel. The people that like the new Daniel might not like the newer Daniel. That's what's tough about this. It's hard. There was a time period where I was getting very conservative. You know, the last election. I hated Hillary, and I was still, I knew the guy was, I knew he was compromised, but I was still into the Alex Jones. Like, I would still listen to InfoWars, and not listen, I'd watch. I'd watch it back when it was on YouTube. And I got really into Trump and really into conservatism, and I actually wanted to become a Republican, and, I was all for Trump, just, I hated Hillary, and I thought he was everything he said he was going to be, so I voted for him, and I encouraged everybody else to vote for him. I talked about it quite a bit on the show. But I changed. I mean, I continued Trumping, and I interacted a lot with the right. I was starting to become a part of the right wing, the right movement. Who knows? Maybe this show was even becoming right wing. But I finally encountered something that I would construe as racist. And I had sort of a personal epiphany. And I said to myself, obviously, just because you're conservative or Republican or right wing or whatever, of course it doesn't mean you're racist. But there are some heavy racist elements on the right. I don't think anybody would deny that. And I started to think to myself, do I really want to make this my approach? You know what I mean? Like, am I really doing the right thing here? Is this truth? Or am I just jumping along on a political bandwagon? Am I being foolish or sheep-like? I suppose that was the question at the time. I continued to study and research, and my buddy, Gregory Garrett Lessing, who's done a lot of shows with him, he kind of showed me a lot of this stuff about Trump and who he was connected to and what exactly was going on. And, I couldn't deny it anymore. I couldn't pretend like he wasn't part of this so-called Illuminati or these networks of individuals who do this or that. And a lot of people aren't going to like hearing that because Trump's supposed to be against all that stuff. He's supposed to be against the deep state. He's supposed to be for the common man. He's supposed to be against all these creeps. And this, of course, is not the first time I've went into this on this show, but I think it's okay because my perspective is always evolving. It really is. When I saw how happy everybody was when Trump won, that was really beautiful to me. Like that celebration. I went on the InfoWars stream and they were all buzzing off of it and everybody was buzzing. We beat them. We beat the evil Democrats and Hillary and Bill, the perverts. We won. We won. Everything's going to be better now. Pretty much the same way we felt when we were trying to get Obama elected. We were all excited. Oh, this guy's going to make a difference. This guy's going to do something. But, it's the same agenda. It really is. There's no difference between Democrat and Republican. Yes, they're enemies, but they're enemies on the short term. Overall, they still bow to the same master. I think anybody would agree with that. You know, I'll go on Twitter and talk about things like that, and people get really heated at me. They'll get really like, don't say that about Trump. Don't say that about him. He's a hero. He's our king. He's my father. Don't say that. But really, this is a man that has been in the public eye since a very long time, since he was a lot younger. Turns out there's these crazy books written in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s, called, you know what, I should pull this up on my phone before I start running my mouth. But they're called the Baron von Trump stories, or anyways, Baron von Trump. So the Baron von Trump novels. They were written by Ingersoll Lockwood in 1889 and 1893. Now this, so there's all these similarities between these little Baron Trump stories and the real Trump. Like, for example, there's a part where he says, you know, it's not on this Wikipedia page, but there's a part where he talks about the family motto, and it goes something like, the path to success is rife with danger, something like that. Boy, I can't find the exact quote, but it's almost exactly like that. And that's something that Trump actually said in one of his speeches, which is fucking trippy, right? And let's see here. Maybe I could find a little bit more of a conspiracy related website so I can give you more accurate information. So this guy that wrote these Baron Trump novels, I'm not going to get too into this. I'm already getting lost. I should have been better prepared. But this guy that wrote these Baron Trump novels, Ingersoll Lockwood, he also wrote another book called The Last President, which was written in 1900. And it's, shout out to Todd, who made me aware of this stuff when we were having a phone call, and he listens to Clyde Lewis. A lot of you guys out there listen to my show. You also listen to Clyde Lewis, so sometimes we get a little bit of that crossover. But I appreciate when he tells me about interesting stuff going on over there. I don't really have time to sit there and listen, but if I wasn't a show host myself, that would probably be what I'd be super into. But I'm just so busy doing my own show. But I appreciate Clyde. I don't really, I've never talked to him. I've never interacted with him, but I appreciate what he does. I know he puts himself in a lot of danger, and he's had some terrible experiences of getting his car blown up and stuff like that. You got to respect and kind of like somebody like that just because they're, kind of willing to die for the cause. And hopefully he doesn't die, but I got to respect that. So these novels, this other one I was talking about, The Last President, it's about a guy that becomes president, and he has a home on Fifth Avenue, just like the real Donald Trump. And the first person he picks for his cabinet is a guy named Pence. Like, what are the fucking chances of that? That's impossible. These similarities are impossible. There's no way. There's no way that this stuff is possible. So we have those things in common. And also, he's being accosted by this socialist element. These socialists are trying to take over, which again is exactly like what's going on nowadays. So the question remains, could Donald Trump be some sort of time traveler? Could he be somehow benefiting from what's going on in the collective unconscious? Could he be somehow one of these beings like Saint Germain where they just walk in and out of history? Could the Trump family be some sort of, I don't know, Nephilim perhaps? I don't know. What's going on there? Why is this showing up? Is it just a big coincidence, kind of like the JFK and Abe Lincoln thing? But anyways, I wanted to talk about that. And I'm not going to go into the whole fucking hidden history thing. I like to talk about that, and I'm super into it at the moment. But I can't just fly off on that on every show, You could literally do a show every week just about hidden history and the mud flood and stuff like that. And there's entire YouTube channels that are devoted to this stuff. But I'm seeing more and more of this stuff about how, before long, we're not going to be able to talk about this stuff anymore. We are not going to be able to talk about flat Earth. Oh, someone's calling. Someone's calling.
I'd like to talk about that. I'm super into it.
Hello?
At the moment.
Oh, Daniel.
Oh,
you
hey
doing?
there. Hey there, Al. How are you doing?
All right.
Just all
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of weird how this book, that you're talking about that book.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
You ever heard the expression, life imitates art?
Yeah, I have heard that expression.
Well, that's what's going on with that.
Yeah, that very well
After
may be the
all,
case.
After all, books are another form of art, right? Literary art.
Yeah, did you know about this whole thing?
Yeah, a little bit. I heard about it on Coast to Coast last year.
I guess I'm late to the party as usual, but at least I'm talking about it.
A guest was talking about it last year on Coast to Coast.
Yeah, it's really...
I listen to that show every night when I go to bed because I can just turn the radio on, my clock radio on, just until I'm going to sleep.
Well, there's this new term emerging. It's called the Trump rabbit hole. It's where we research and we find out all these really interesting things about Trump. Even people that are really big fans of Trump like this stuff.
How about this? Somebody freaking knew about Trump already and jumped in a time machine and freaking went back and wrote that shit.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking it has to be something that the Anunnaki are doing. Somehow they orchestrated this whole thing.
Or just somebody. Well, fuck, I was, I don't know if I should be, probably better not be telling you about this whole experience I had a couple weeks ago.
No, we want to know.
Well, no, I'll get in trouble if I tell you about that.
From who?
But I can tell you that from those above.
No, I'm good with them. You know that. Why am I still alive, Al? It's because, they let me do this stuff.
I had some experiences a few weeks ago that I'm not allowed to discuss.
You can talk about it with me.
But I can tell you this coronavirus shit's a bunch of crap. It's a weapon.
I believe that.
They're using the 5G to activate it.
I had fucking 10 grand in the market and I lost almost all of it.
Well, how about this? I've been seeing a bunch of stories of these Democrat the rich multimillionaire Democrat politicians in Congress. Cashed out just before the Dow started taking a shit.
Yeah, I wish I would have done that. I was fucking about to put a gun to my head until I realized there's more to life than money.
Yeah, I got a neighbor who teaches drones and has some links to Las Vegas, and I talked to him yesterday, and he said he's already lost 15 grand just in the last week from the loss of business.
I don't doubt it. And that's just the beginning, Al, because the further we go along, more people are going to go broke, more people are going to freak out, and more people are going to want to kill each other.
Yeah, no, that's going to cause the fucking revolution where people grab their guns and organize and take out these assholes causing the shit.
That's what I'm afraid of, because I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with people looting and stealing from each other and crap like that. I don't know what's going to happen. Everything seems to be falling apart.
Well, here's one thing I can tell you about my experiences a couple weeks ago. I was given 4 options. Do I want to deal with a nuclear war, an asteroid hitting the planet, a frickin' zombie apocalypse, or an alien invasion? Those are 4 scenarios that I was told I might have to deal with here in the near future by the end of summer.
Well, I can tell you one of them's bunk because there are no aliens.
Yeah, there are, but I picked the zombie apocalypse. You want to know why?
Why is that?
Well, let's see. A nuclear war, that's pretty hard to survive, especially when everything's all radioactive, even the food and water. So that's not fun. The asteroid hitting the planet, that fuck everything up and fucking just throw a heat wave or a wall of fire around the planet. That wouldn't be fun to deal with. And the alien invasion, well, I don't have fucking weaponry that I can shoot down a flying saucer with. I can't shoot a flying saucer down with my rifle, right? But
I don't know that.
But a zombie
Maybe you can.
but a zombie apocalypse, I have frickin' axes, I have my hatchets, I have all my knives, and I have my guns to hunt for food.
Okay, just make sure you're not axing sick people. Make sure they're actual zombies.
Well, of course.
But hey, Al, here's the
That's
thing
kind
with
of
it. Here's the thing with the aliens. I'm gonna explain to you why aliens aren't real and why you believe in them. So, aliens are basically a construct because when we look out at the universe, we can't see shit. There's no alien civilizations. There's no starships. There's no planets. There's nothing out there. As far as you can see, there's absolutely nothing. And just like my guest explained earlier, if there was aliens on this planet, there'd be trash and stuff like that left behind from them. But there is none. It's because the beings that visited this planet were exactly what they said that they were. They were gods. And those gods...
Yeah, well, let me...
Go ahead.
Okay, I Googled... I'm on a Facebook page called Archon Pleiadian Starseeds.
Bullshit.
Someone was talking about how she's feeling all run down and tired and unmotivated, shit like that. And I explained it's 5G poisoning, and somebody started giving me shit for it. So I started telling her about the loosh trade. Here's something I found tonight. What is a loosh energy farm? Since the beginning of human history, humans have been enslaved by an unseen force called the Archons. These beings love to cause human suffering. What is a loosh energy farm? A loosh energy farm is a spiritual energy farm built on the astral plane to harvest energy from the dead or suffering of any living creature, mainly humans, on Earth. The energy is then harvested by transdimensional beings. Upon the death of a human or a living creature, these beings will then feed on their life energy to extend their lifespan. When we suffer, life force energy is spewed from our bodies, and the tastier the energy meal for our creators. Origins of loosh energy farm. Loosh energy farm was founded by Robert Monroe, who was an expert on astral travel. He said he used matrix glitches in our planet and reality to have interactions and explore other worlds and dimensions. Monroe claims that he has more than 1,000 travels and contacts with other dimensions, and he is doing that for more than a decade. In one of his journeys to another dimension, he discovered something sinister. In the last months of his life, he came out with the theory that planet Earth is a big energy loosh farm. Humans represent livestock that produce loosh when they die. All planets are under the control of the beings named the Archons. They are feeding and assimilating energy that the human body releases when humans die. How is loosh created? Loosh is created by constant fear, materialism, etc. It is also created with indefinite wars, poverty, natural disasters, diseases, and all situations where people die or suffer to consume their energy. Also, the plants and animals are also positioned on Earth because of the same reason. That's why animals are predators and eat each other. When any human being dies on planet Earth, the Archons feed on their loosh. Basically, the greater suffering the living being goes through, the more loosh is then produced. That's why they are creating constant violent and extreme situations. 9/11 and the loosh energy ritual. There are theories that the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center was a giant loosh energy farm ritual. The amount of fear and horror that came from the event created a huge amount of loosh energy that the Archons then harvested. The Twin Towers were said to be created to then be destroyed, leading up to the world-changing event that shocked America.
Okay. Now, I agree about the loosh thing.
That's what's going on now with this fucking pandemic crap. You know how many people died so far since the beginning of this year from just a regular flu?
Yeah, but I agree with the loosh thing.
Only 300 people or so have died so far in the United States from this coronavirus crap, yet 16,000 people have already died from the flu so far this year.
Yeah, that's really interesting in terms of what exactly is going on and the hysteria they're creating. But I do agree with this loosh thing. I think that is accurate. I don't think that there's anything inaccurate about that. But you got to understand, Al, that's the reason why they're creating the illusion of aliens. It's because these aliens are fake. They just want the loosh. They're not really aliens. They're energy vampires who drink loosh for a living, and they will make us believe anything that they can to get us to keep giving them this energy of ours.
Yeah, because they feed on it.
But the thing is, they're not.
But they also collect it and ship it elsewhere for other aliens to feed on.
See, that's the part that you got wrong, because there's not a big interplanetary loose trade out there. That's a bunch of BS. That we would see evidence of that. Anything that's going on like that is going on in other dimensions that we cannot see, in some sort of astral plane. That's where all the bad guys are. That's where they're drinking our energy from. It's not like, it's not like these beings.
Yeah, but a few weeks ago, I went to these other dimensions and was fucking interacting with them.
So you acknowledge that there are other dimensions?
Of course. Interdimensional beings that are feeding. That's what the gray aliens are. They're just in another dimension, but they're still there and they exist. And might as well call them aliens because they're not from this world.
Okay, I'll give you that. But the ancient gods, the Anunnaki, right?
Yeah, they're out there too.
Yeah, in fact, not only are they still out there,
but they're in another dimension also.
I once again, I agree. But the thing is, those guys are still here, and they're still doing the same thing that they did back then. They're controlling our belief system, getting us to feed them energy by naming the planets and everything up there after themselves. Apollo, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, Pluto. They're naming all the stuff up there after that stuff. So we keep looking up and venerating them. Nothing's changed. The more things change, the more things stay the same. All of the current religions in the world are still focused on the Anunnaki, if you really break them down.
Yeah, or these freaking theocrats in the astral planes that I explained to you before in that book, War in Heaven, Invisible College.
Yeah, see, now that's key too, because now the war in heaven, I don't really believe in that anymore, Al. A lot of people are going to be upset at me, but I don't think that it went down like that. I mean, if I look into the ancient past and what actually went down, I see this war between this guy named Anu and his son Enki, and also his brother Enlil was involved. He was on the side of Anu, and they had this big, massive war in the past. It was a war between demigods on different sides, and it sounds like the ones that were rebelling were actually on the side of the humans.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, see, you agree with
that.
Well,
what I can tell you about my experience a few weeks ago is I ran into Jesus and his father.
Tell us about that.
And they threatened to throw me into the fucking bottomless pit because of my behavior and how I got to where they were.
Can you explain that?
No, just freaking. I got a hold of a chemical and I was told not to take it too far, and I did take it too far and ended up all the way to the soul train.
So they want you to change your ways.
No, freaking, I was supposed to catch a ride on them. I said, sorry, you can't come. You don't deserve it. And I go, what? And then, so I left, finished what I was doing, and then freaking came home. And while I was coming home, I helped the Arcturians ascend from the 7th dimension to the 9th dimension.
Are you sure that happened, Al? There were Arcturians?
Yeah, because I'm a member of the Arcturian Pleiadian Starseed family on Facebook.
Al, that's some kind of deception, brother.
No, these are just ascended beings of light that frickin' needed my help.
But how do you know they're not just like some evil demons that are making humans believe this stuff so they can steal their energy?
Because I wasn't giving them any energy. I was just helping them out.
You think you're helping them
out? I was on my...
What did it feel like? What did it feel like when you're helping them out? Did you just close your eyes and like imagine this happening? Is that what happened?
No, frickin' I get high on a certain chemical and frickin' all of a sudden frickin' my brain connects to the internet or the Ethernet.
Al, to be fair, if you're on drugs, we can't like say that was Arcturians. That might have been the drugs, right?
No, I've interacted with the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, the freaking Zeta Reticulans, the Greys, if you want to call them that, the Watchers, the Archons. They hate my ass because every time they attack me, freaking I show no fear.
Well, I'm glad that
that's what they want to feed on, is all this fear and panic that people are experiencing.
I'm glad you're resisting them, because I just have a bad feeling about these beings.
It's like so do I. It's a feeding frenzy right now, and all this fear and shit people are freaking throwing out there.
I mean, ultimately,
like
I don't know. I don't mean to discount your experience. If you say there's Arcturians, I don't mean to discount that. There very well could be. I mean, I don't know everything.
Well, the freaking Archons are stuck in the 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensions. They can't go above that.
Well, if we go back into ancient history, right, and we actually look at how the creation of the world began, it's basically the gods coming out of nothingness and subjugating this being called Tiamat, who just represents the primordial chaos, forming a world out of this being called Tiamat, and then controlling that world through dominance.
Yeah, well, we are in a make-believe freaking reality that they created for us.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. I mean, we could go over the details and what we agree and disagree about, but as far as us being in a prison system, I think we're on the same page about that.
Yeah, we definitely are in a prison system. They want my ass out of here real bad.
They want you out?
Yeah, because I can interfere with it.
By doing drugs?
Here's a good one for you. Here's a good one for you. Freaking while I was high, I was flipping through the stations. All of a sudden, on this Mexican station, this thing pops up, says Universal News. And they were blaming me for the coronavirus. They were trying to tell me that I created it.
You created the coronavirus.
And that's what they were trying to tell me. I don't think so.
Well, hey, maybe you did. Maybe you did. Do we know for sure that you didn't?
No. If I was going to create a virus, it would be ethnically freaking specific.
Can you repeat that, please?
I said, if I was to create a virus like that, it would be ethnically specific.
And who would it attack?
Well, it's like I'm not a racist, but because everybody's a racist. You talk to any fucking black man in private with other black people. If you were a black man, you were talking about fucking white people with other black people. You'd be fucking saying that you want to get rid of white people. If you were brown, you'd say you want to get rid of fucking everybody that wasn't brown. Everybody's a fucking racist. I don't give a fuck what they say. Everybody in their heart is a racist, no matter what color of their skin. They're racist against everybody else.
Well, there's got to be varying degrees. I'm not racist.
There's varying degrees, of course, but fucking everybody's a fucking racist.
Well, now hold on a second.
Everybody's a racist against everybody else.
Hold on a second.
Everybody wants to be the dominant race and wants everybody that's not like them gone.
Okay, what if you're like me and you're a mixed race? You're a person of mixed race. What happens then? Who do I side with?
What do you mean mixed race? What kind of races are you?
Why are you asking me that? What does it matter what races I am?
Well, you said you're a mixed race. You're a mixture of what?
Why do you want to know? Are you going to judge me differently?
No. It has nothing to do with judging you. I'm just curious. You said you're a mixed race. Explain yourself.
Okay, that's easily done. I'm 3/4 Caucasian, a various mixture of different Euro races, and I'm also a quarter Japanese.
All right, well, okay. See, I'm not going to judge you for that. I have no problem with the Japanese other than Fukushima and what they're doing there.
What about Pearl Harbor?
Well, we knew about that before it was going to happen, and they just let it happen anyway. So,
You gotta let this go, though, Al. You're a good guy. You gotta let this black thing go, man.
No, it's just fucking they dominate the goddamn fucking radio, and it's pissing me off.
You mean with the music?
Yeah, there ain't no fucking white people music on there no more except that bullshit fucking country music. Even they're fucking following in that fucking bullshit. Has nothing to do with the color of their skin. I just hate their fucking music. I'm tired of it. All that fucking rap crap everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something a lot of people can relate to. It's a form of social engineering.
Yeah, I don't hate black people. I just hate the fact that they're fucking dominating the goddamn airways nowadays.
Yeah, I mean,
Has nothing to do with fucking color. Has nothing to do with the color of their skin at all. I'm not racist in that way at all.
well,
I don't give
good.
a fuck what color people are. I hate everybody.
Well, good. I mean, I get kind of annoyed when it's all rap and stuff, but you know, I would even be happy if they released some halfway decent rap music. It's just like it all sucks nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they just rip everybody else off. They got to fucking do everything on a fucking computer. They can't fucking create their own music from scratch to save their own fucking souls. But, you know, it has nothing to do with the color of their skin. I don't hate fucking their color of their skin. I don't like their culture. Just like the Mexicans. They come up here and fucking blast their fucking mariachi or whatever fucking music, whatever you want to call it, all over the fucking place. And that, you know, I don't want to hear it. Leave it down in Mexico.
Al, you got to give me a break, buddy. I can't have like racial. I mean, anything goes on this program. I can't have like racial stuff. I'm gonna get kicked off of everything.
Dude, fucking, if we were down in Mexico talking shit about Americans, fucking, that's racist too. But fucking nobody gives a shit about that.
I know it's not up to me. I'm gonna get kicked off of everything. Don't you understand that? I'm gonna get kicked off of the services that you watch the show on.
All right, well, let's change the subject.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
What do
like.
you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like saying that you don't have any good points that you're making. I'm just saying it's like it's a dangerous type of talk because people aren't gonna understand your perspective and they're just gonna label you as soon as they hear any of that stuff, and that's not fair to you. And it's certainly not fair.
No, I've been kicked off Facebook a few times for talking smack about gays and LGBTs too, for expressing my opinion about that. Just mentioning it, even innocuous shit. It fucking had nothing to do with attacking them or anything. I still got kicked off Facebook for it.
Well, you know, this one time, let's talk about this a little bit, Al. What is your problem with gays? Let's hear it.
It's an abomination in fucking creator's eyes. There's only two genders, male and female, not all these other ones. And as far as the transgender thing, frickin' you don't go frickin' deciding halfway through the life that you've already picked to fucking decide, oh, I want to be the opposite sex all of a sudden. You take what you were given and fucking live with it until you're dead, and then fucking if you want to be a female, do that the next time around.
So should it
Or
be?
if you're a female and you decide you want to be a male, wait until you die and fucking do that in your next go around.
So should it be like?
You don't fucking decide halfway. No, so before you life you're going to live and fucking your gender and all that shit, and you don't decide halfway through, oh, I want to be this instead.
So should it be like?
That's not how it works.
Should it be like Russia, where if you're caught doing that or people know you're doing that, they throw you in prison or jail?
Here's a good thing about Russia. On another subject, it's coronavirus shit. I'm noticing on the maps that fucking Russia ain't getting hit at all.
Yeah, that's something people have been pointing out.
Yeah, there's fucking all these countries got all these big old red circles, and Russia's got one little tiny one right in the middle.
Okay, so Al, let's say you're hanging out with some guys, and some like gay guy walks in the room and he sits down and he starts talking and he's going, yeah, he's acting real flamboyant and saying, hey, what's going on, buddy? Are you gonna get uncomfortable? Are you gonna like get up and leave, or are you gonna talk to him? Like, how do you handle a situation like that?
I'll talk to him like a civilized human being. I'm not that fucking lame. I'm not going to sit just because I don't like their lifestyle and shit like that doesn't mean I can't be nice and friendly to them.
Okay. I think a lot of people appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just like black people. I meet all kinds of black people on my job. I got no problem with them. I just got a problem with the fucking culture.
Do you ever...
The whole rap and hip-hop culture.
Is there anybody that you can't stand so much that you will get up and leave?
I don't know. If Nancy Pelosi came in the room, I'd probably walk up and smack her and then walk out the door.
Oh, damn.
But she's trying to block us getting them fucking payments that Trump's trying to give us. You know that $2,000 Trump wants to give everybody?
Yeah, I want that.
She's trying to block that shit. She don't want us having that.
I need it. I just lost tons of money in the market. No,
but I need it to fucking survive on. I fucking lost my job because of this shit for a minute. I'm out of work
You
right now
lost.
because of this crap.
Oh shit! I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks, man.
The only trucks going down the road right now are those hauling food and those hauling medical supplies. Everybody else fucking shut down completely.
Oh shit! So you can't make any money right now.
Right. I hauled food packaging down to Los Angeles. You know, the boxes that the fucking frozen food comes in.
Oh.
But I hauled carpet and fucking T-shirts and shit like that back to Salt Lake, and fucking there ain't nothing for me to come out of Los Angeles no more.
Fuck. Are you in trouble? Do you have savings?
I got well, we're not in trouble yet, but I will be in a few weeks.
Hey, I'm right there with you, buddy. I can't work right now.
Yeah, I got no savings.
Yeah, I'm stuck at home.
I got no savings. In fact, yeah, exactly. I'm stuck at home now too. I can't go nowhere.
Yeah, I feel you, man. It's getting really bad. What do you see happening? Is this gonna clear up in a month or 2 months, or what the fuck's going on?
Well, Sylvia, you're heard of Sylvia Brown, the psychic.
Yeah, very familiar with her.
She wrote a book 12 years ago called The End of Days, and in it there's a paragraph where she says, in 2020, an illness will befall the globe that freaking attacks the lungs and bronchial tubes, and just as mysteriously as it showed up, it'll mysteriously just disappear.
Yeah, that's crazy. I did not know Sylvia Brown had a book called The End of Days. That's very in tune with my philosophy.
I didn't either, but it was making rounds on my Facebook feed for a couple days ago.
Well,
and then last night on Costa, or not last night, but Thursday night, George Norrie mentioned it too.
Yeah, like me, the way I feel a little bit vindicated because I'm the End of Days guy, and I've been telling people it's the end of the world since, time immemorial. Like 2012, I've been telling everybody it's the end of days, it's the time of revelations, blah, blah, blah. And now a lot of people are saying it, and while I do feel a little bit happy because I feel vindicated, I also feel like this sucks because it sucks.
Well, it's not the end of the world, it's just the end of the system of things. The current regime we've been living under, like this, you're about the earthquake that hit Salt Lake the other day?
Yeah, I was talking to our buddy Todd about it. He was pretty shaken up. Him and his whole family got hit, that church got hit, and that trumpet fell out of the angel's hands, and another sign of the apocalypto.
Yeah, well, I got some scuttlebutt about that. Frickin' I Googled a few years ago alien bases, and it showed there was a big one underneath Salt Lake. That earthquake was a tactical nuke, like a backpack briefcase-sized nuke.
Mm-hmm.
That we used to break into the back entrance of this alien base, and all these aftershocks of the battle.
Come on, you buy into that comic book shit.
This ain't comic book shit. This is fucking real shit. There's a war going on underneath the fucking Salt Lake right now, down in that alien base. All these aftershocks are the explosions from this battle going on down there.
And no, there's not, Al. Come on, that's so far-fetched. There would be more evidence if something like that was going on. People would be getting it on their cell phones. There's no battle going on down there. I mean, there might have been.
Why does everybody need evidence of fucking something going on just because you can't see it? Fucking doesn't mean it's not really going on.
Because if I'm going to believe everything that I read on the internet, there's too many different conflicting things. There's like 50 different theories out there. The reptilians are good. The reptilians are bad.
I didn't get this shit off the internet. This is shit that I know about.
Can you give us any evidence or point us in a direction where
let's just say that the white hats are freaking going after the black hats and freaking are trying to clean up this mess.
Oh, so you buy into that whole Trump, Q, MAGA thing?
No, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Well,
you remember the old westerns? The white hats were the good guys, the black hats were the bad guys.
Sure.
All right, I'm just using that as a reference point. The white hats are going after the black hats to freaking clean this mess up.
See, that's what I don't understand is this idea that there's these secret wars going around and these people running around and these battles happening. Because there was an earthquake, it doesn't mean that there was a bomb going off. I mean, it could be so many different things like that. But
where they're saying this fucking earthquake happened is an inactive fault.
So you're saying it's aliens and it's reptilians and all that David Icke stuff is the truth?
Yeah, we're just getting rid of the fucking good aliens. We're fucking trying to get rid of the bad aliens for good this time.
And it's all aliens. There's no spirituality. It's just a big alien war.
Yep.
See, that's so
Spirituality,
that's so simple.
spirituality is just no. It's like on these Facebook pages I'm on, where all these people are all talking about ascension and shit like that. Ascension is just a state of mind. It's not a physical reality.
I challenge
We're
one
not going
alien.
to the Earth is not going to physically be raised up into the fifth dimension automatically. It's not going to happen until fucking everybody on the Earth fucking gets their shit together and fucking decides to love everybody as their brother and sister, and fucking then when all this fucking negative shit's gone, then the Earth could possibly be raised by the human race up into the fifth dimension, but not until then.
But the thing is,
right now it's just a bunch of hype.
When you get into this stuff about aliens, it's like, okay, well, aliens created us. Okay, who created the aliens? Oh, other aliens. And it just goes on and on. It's like, it's a way of explaining things that gives you an automatic loophole where you can always claim that other aliens made the next thing. You know what I mean?
Fucking Earth humans are not the only humans in the galaxy or the universe.
But there would have to be
They're
some
spread
proof
out
of that.
throughout the thing. Why does everybody need proof? Why can't you just have faith?
Because if we just have faith, then why don't we just stick with normal Christianity?
Well, see, I'm a Christian, but I don't believe in Christianity. I think it's a crock of shit. Love it. Well, like when I got thrown in hell a few weeks ago, first thing I did was start saying peace, love, and happiness to everybody in the universe, in all dimensions, all beings, in all dimensions, all universes, all timelines. Guess what happened? Guess what happened after I started doing that? I got kicked out of hell.
You got kicked out of hell?
Yeah, the lower dimension. It's all about frequencies, dimensions. Everything that's going on this planet's going on in higher dimensions too, except fucking lower dimensions. There's a lot of negative and hate and negativity and hate. In higher dimensions, there's fucking love and peace.
Okay.
You stuck up on toilet paper?
No, I think that that part is true. There are other dimensions. There are thicker, hellish dimensions, and that's my perspective. I mean, I don't mean to say there's no aliens, because like you alluded to earlier, if a being is in another dimension, therefore it does count as an alien. I mean, it's very alien to us. I do believe that there's beings out there, and there's a hierarchy of some type, and you ascend into thinner and thinner realms where the beings become more holy, so to speak, more close to a godly type of being. So yeah, I can vibe to that.
Yeah, I've been to those dimensions. I've been there. I've seen it. But freaking, it's like the other night. I was on the dream plane, but I was in San Jose, California, and there was a freaking battle going up in the sky between us and freaking aliens. I was seeing freaking our ships and alien ships shooting at each other, and I was seeing freaking chunks of blown up craft fucking falling, raining from the sky all around me.
Why do you love aliens so much? Are you really into Star Trek or Star Wars? Why are you so into this like alien battle thing? Are you like a big Battlestar Galactica guy or Deep Space Nine?
I'm a huge Star Trek fan.
There you go. That's where it all comes from, Al. That's why you believe in aliens, because you want it to be true.
No, but I've communicated with them too. You can call them demons. You can call them angels. I don't know. They've never physically shown themselves to me, but I've still communicated with them.
But I'm not saying the phenomena itself is not real, because obviously something's going on. I'm just saying when it happens to you, you come from the alien perspective where you label it as alien where it might not be.
No, it's like when I'm coming down off that chemical I was discussing earlier. Frickin', I'll be watching my TV and frickin' most of the people on there got black eyes instead of frickin' white eyes.
And to you, that's alien.
Or they're archons. The gray aliens with the big black eyes.
But couldn't they be from one of these hell dimensions? Like what? Why do
they could be. Yeah, they could be demons too. All I know is frickin' I'll be watching TV and frickin' be communicating with them shit like that, and their eyes are black instead of they got white eyes, but frickin' where the retina's at.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having the colored retina, they're black. The center of their eyeballs are completely black.
Yeah, one thing that has always bothered me when I was into aliens, when I got really into Ancient Astronauts.
I don't watch that show.
Sure, but why is it that they say that these old gods are aliens when the aliens that people report seeing, like the little gray aliens, reptilians, and stuff like that, they look nothing like those ancient beings. There's no depictions of gray aliens.
No, but it's just like if I had a time machine and went back 10,000 years, fucking, and had all this technology and fucking shit like we got now, people would think I was a god.
Yeah.
Like if I could take a Bic lighter with me and flick my fucking Bic and fucking have a flame come up there. Oh my God, this guy's a god.
But the thing is, what if I was a god? It works both ways. People would think that's technology.
We're all a piece of god, every one of us.
And we can probably on some level, use magics, like manifest stuff and use our intent and do things that are godly, like if we really knew how.
Yeah, we could if fucking everybody had their hearts full of love instead of freaking hate and shit for everybody else that ain't like them.
Yeah, I mean, but don't you see that towards like LGBT people? Like, shouldn't we love them?
I think they ought to fucking pull their head out of their ass and fucking be normal like everybody else, man and woman. That's it.
But what if a person doesn't have those feelings towards women? What if they're into horses, or they're into robots, or they're into stuffed animals? Are you saying that they need to get themselves right and be into women?
I think they've got psychological problems.
Okay, let's say they have psychological problems. Shouldn't we let them be and let them express their psychological problems? Why do we have to fix them?
Because the norm is fucking a man with a woman.
But that's the norm.
To propagate the species.
Well, for one thing, we don't need to propagate the species. And the other thing is that this is normal by whose definition? I mean, does anybody really decide? And the last thing is, it'll never be the majority of the people doing these things. It's like people that are into aliens or anything else. They're just going and they're doing their own thing. And it might be disgusting to us or to you or to others, but it's not really hurting us, is it?
Well, it's hurting them.
Okay, let's say it is hurting them. Shouldn't they have a right to hurt themselves?
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, take it easy on these people. I mean, they're just, you don't have to have sex with them, but they're not going to hurt you.
Well, I'm not scared of them. Fucking, that's why I don't get the word homophobia. Phobia is a fear of something. I'm not scared of them.
Yeah, me neither. I've never been.
I'm a little hurt by it, but fucking spiritually, but I'm not fucking going to hate them. It's like hate the sin, love the sinner, right?
Yeah.
I don't hate them. I hate their behavior.
Well, see that word sin. Sin is actually a god from the past.
Sin is actually the Latin word for without.
But there's also a god named Sin too.
Oh, I know that sin is a Latin word for without.
Sure, I don't doubt that. But you're calling something a sin, so in that case, you're a Christian in that sense?
Yeah, I told you I'm a Christian, but I don't believe in fucking the Bible and all that in religion.
But you believe the part about gays.
I call everybody brother and sister. Hate the sin, love the sinner. Just because they're engaging in behavior that I don't fucking agree with doesn't mean I can't fucking love them like a brother or sister, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair, Al. But
my problem though is ever since gay marriage came out, now all the pedophiles are saying, well, we should be allowed to do what we want to do, and all the zoophiliacs are all, well, we should be allowed to do what we want to do too.
Yeah, I don't. It
opened up a floodgate.
Sure,
everything goes. There's got to be limits,
No, I've spoken out. I've spoken out publicly about certain things like giving hormones to children. Very against that. I'm very against trans women being in women's sports. I think that's not okay. Those two things especially, I think are. Oh, and like you mentioned, this thing where the pedophiles and zoo people are being accepted as normal. That should never happen. That's awful. That's demonic.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Once you let one fucking behavior become acceptable, then fucking everybody else, well, then my behavior should be acceptable too.
Well, the thing is, though,
Just like in California, Gavin Newsom wants to release everybody on death row back out into the public. You know, those people are in there for being freaking vicious murderers.
yeah, that's
The governor of California wants to release them back on the street.
okay. What about lesbians, Al?
Well, I understand it. Fucking got all these fat women that fucking guys don't want to be with because they're fat, and fucking so they turn to lesbianism, and because at least they got somebody to love them. I get all of that.
Have you ever watched lesbian porn?
Of course.
Did you like it?
I like having two fucking women to have sex with while I was fucking fantasizing.
But don't you get that that's homosexuality?
Yeah, but see, when I get on that chemical, freaking, if I start fantasizing about them girls on porn, they know I'm there and they feel me inside them, like a fucking succubus or like an incubus.
Okay.
They react to what I'm thinking.
Isn't that a little bit of a double standard that you're okay with having a threesome with two women, but you're turned off by? I mean, you don't approve of a gay man?
No, that fucking back hole there is fucking a cesspit of bacteria and all kinds of nasty shit. And you want to stick your fucking piece of you inside there? I don't agree with sodomy of any kind, way, shape, or form.
But it's okay to have sex with two women and enter one and then enter the other one and swap all these juices and spit around and.
If she didn't want to come out, there you go.
Tough questions.
I don't know. What was your question again?
Well, if let's say you had a why am I talking about this? Well, let's say you had a threesome with two women. Sick conversation. Let's say you had a threesome with two women and you're swapping all kinds of spit and they're, going down on each other. Sorry, Jesus. They're going down on each other and, all these different fluids are being exchanged and all these weird feelings and stuff like that. I mean, surely that's no different than, two males or something like that. It's just one you are turned on by and one grosses you out.
Yeah, because I don't fucking want anything to do with fucking other males and their penises.
Are you sure about that?
I am positive. I'm 100% positive. I'm 1,000% positive about that.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
It makes my skin crawl just to think about that shit, dude.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Men are supposed to be warriors, not fucking that.
So, what about a man that becomes a woman, like Bruce Jenner?
I ran into that at the grocery store the other day. There was a guy named Misty. I could totally tell he was born a male, but he had all the female parts now.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it, but I didn't fucking treat him like a piece of crap or anything like that. I just treated him like he was a normal person, just another person.
Okay, I think you're a good dude, Al. I think you're a good man.
I'm a good guy. Just have some strong opinions about certain things.
Okay, I'm satisfied.
But I've had some run-ins with some aliens, and freaking they don't like me. I won't fucking show the fear they want to feed on.
Well, Al, we've had a great conversation here. We could jump back into the alien topic, but I've had you on here for an hour now, and the clock is ticking, and I want to get out of here eventually. So I appreciate you calling in, buddy. We had a good talk.
Yeah, it's been about 45 minutes, but yeah, all right. Peace be with you, brother.
All right, thanks. Bye.
All right, see you.
And that was our buddy Al. Boy, very strong opinions about a few different things, huh? He certainly has a strong opinion about the gays. If I hadn't made it clear, I'm not saying that Al believes this or that. I know he wouldn't like me putting words in his mouth, but I definitely don't have feelings like that towards gays. I did when I was younger, like really, really badly so, like in junior high and high school. And that had a lot to do with peer pressure. Everybody's like, oh, faggot, faggot, gay, gay. Like on South Park, it was, they're always saying, this is gay, that's gay. So it was kind of accepted back then that gays were a bad thing and gays were terrible. beings. They're doing something horrible. It's not like nowadays. Nowadays, the kids are totally different. You say fag or the F word to them, and they get really mad at you. Don't say that. That's homophobic. And they have non-gender specific proms and things like that. So, let's see. I was in high school. I'm 37. So, 19 years ago, the world was a very different place. If you came out as gay in high school, when I was in high school, the other boys would kick your ass. They would hate you. They would give you a hard time every day. And I and many other people saw that happen. Somebody would announce they're gay, or they might not even announce they're gay. People might just be calling them gay, and then the next day you're sitting there in homeroom or something, and somebody comes up and smacks them in the back of the head with a book, and just kind of brains them a little bit. Everybody laughs. It's okay because that's a faggot. It's okay to hurt a faggot and knock his brains around his head or stomp on his head. And I hear these stories like, I'm not a big like liberal progressive or anything like that. I don't have those sorts of opinions. I just see some of these news stories like some lesbians were on a bus and this group of guys like just grabbed them and started beating the crap out of them. It just made them angry. You see a lot of these transgendered people getting attacked. Maybe some of them want to be attacked so they can kind of play the martyr. But once things get to a point of violence, you really gotta say, hey, this is wrong. It's not okay to be violent against anybody, especially for just living a certain lifestyle. The only time it's okay to use violence is to defend yourself. That's the way that I feel. And there's a lot of... When I was in high school, like I said, I was really against gays, and I made friends with this girl. She was like a goth, and she was bisexual. I remember the first time she told me she was bisexual, I was just in shock. I was like, what? How's that possible? You're pretty. How could you be bisexual? I thought lesbians were big, fat, hairy beasts. And at the time it really bothered me because I didn't understand that, anybody could be gay or bisexual or anything like that. I thought she was just really like a rare sort of being. And, she'd tell me a lot of this, these arguments that gay people would have to defend themselves and stuff like that. And I suppose that was the first time that I ever met a perspective that was anything besides gays are bad. We hate gays. Gays are sinners, blah, blah, blah. This was the first person I was friends with that was a gay person. And, it wasn't a big deal to my parents or to our group of friends because she was a girl. There were gay guys floating around, but they weren't accepted back then. Because she was a girl, it was just a little bit more acceptable. But even she got heavily bullied. She's a pretty girl, and she got really bullied bad. Not so much in high school, but in junior high, she was just bullied every day. And it really affected who she was. And thank God that she, came out of it a really great person and a nice person and somebody that could be open and, not traumatized and all messed up. But the way that people would treat her for, a lifestyle choice, I just, that's not right. You can't torture a person or peer pressure them or force them into accepting your beliefs or how you think people should live their lives. I mean, if you don't agree with it, I'm not saying like you should let your own culture be overridden, like what's happening in Europe with the Muslim culture coming in and overriding the culture. That's different. I'm talking about people making a lifestyle choice to just do something that is gross or disagreeable to you, and it's not your business, no matter how it makes you feel. It makes you feel like pissed off or aggravated, or that's some sort of abomination. You feel angry and uncomfortable. The thing is, you just got to feel uncomfortable. You got to swallow it. You got to swallow it like you swallow your pride, and you just got to put up with it because that's another person and another person's choice. and you can be mad about it. You have a right to be mad about it, but you don't have a right to be violent against a person. Obviously, I'm not telling you guys out there anything that you don't know or anything that hasn't been indoctrinated into you. I just really strongly feel that way because, you see anybody getting bullied or you see anybody having violence inflicted upon them. I don't care if you're a Jew, you're black, you're white, you're a Palestinian, or what. It's just disturbing on a deep soul level. You just know it's wrong. I remember there was another group of guys that I hung out with for a while, and they were into what was called gay bashing, and they'd all get together and they'd go drive around the city downtown. I don't know. I was obviously never with them. I just heard these stories, and they'd go look for gay people to go attack and beat up. You think to yourself, who would even act that way? Who would ever actually go out and try to hurt other people like that, just willy-nilly? I always thought that was really, really strange. And obviously I stopped hanging out with these guys, and I stopped having anything to do with them because that wasn't it. Let's put it that way. That wasn't it. They were violent individuals. They were gang members. They were out of control emotionally. These type of guys, if you would just sit there and stare at them, they couldn't handle that. If you would stare at them or make eye contact for too long, they felt challenged. I mean, me, you can sit there and you can make eye contact with me all day long. I might say hello at some point. I might get uncomfortable and leave. I don't know. I'm probably not going to try to pick a fight with you unless I'm in a really bad mood. And I still probably won't. But that's all it takes for some of these guys. They just, you look at them the wrong way and you give them some excuse to accost you or attack you. It's crazy. It's so animalistic. And it's not intelligent. It's not civilized. And that's why I don't make friends with that type of person. And that's why I don't have anything to do with gang members or people like that. Gang stuff. What am I even talking? Why am I talking about this shit? Who cares? Let's move on. I'm trying to talk about gangs now. Gays to gangs. Okay, enough's enough. I'm not going to do a mind-blowing moment of the day because today's show is a little different. We had a skeptic on. We talked about some interesting stuff, but I wouldn't really say it's that type of show today. So I don't think I'll do the mind-blowing moment of the day. I do have a few other things I want to talk about. The first being this cringeworthy video that these celebs released. This We Are the World thing. This total garbage. I don't even know what to call it, but it's just, it's so bad that it makes me cringe for like the rest of my life. That's how bad it is. Most of these actors and actresses in this video are people that were on the Epstein list. The Epstein flight list, the people that are going to Epstein Island, and there's only one reason to go to Epstein Island, which is to like mess around with little teenage girls. There's no other reason to go there. That's why they were going there. So all these people that have their names on this list, they're all singing this song. Imagine other people. Imagine other people living for days. It's Gal Gadot and Will Ferrell and Sarah Silverman and the list goes on and on. There's like 25 of them or something like that. And the whole internet just exploded. They're like, we hate this shit. This sucks. You people are annoying. We don't want to see your ugly faces up to the camera singing some stupid ass song. You can't sing and you're rich. And you're sitting here singing to us saying, imagine there's no heaven. Imagine there's no this or that. And you people are sequestered away and you're freaking rich. And you think we want to hear your asses sing when we're fucking dying out here? We want to hear your asses sing. What makes you think that you're so special that we want to hear you sing? This is how society feels about this. This isn't my opinion. It is my opinion, but it's also how society feels about this. They don't want to hear vapid celebrities who are already getting all the attention get more attention. Why do they need more attention? They've already got everybody paying attention to them. They don't need social media too. Social media should be for the normal people that can't get attention that way. Like, it's never enough for them. And the video sucked. It's supposed to be like, we are the world. But the thing is, anybody can make videos like this using Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram. The video itself sucked. They could have at least got together and filmed it like we are the world and actually made something cool. But it's just this terrible, awful thing that makes you just cringe forever and ever because it's so fucking bad. Celebs, just stop. I'm asking you, just fucking stop. You're not what you used to be. Nowadays, social media influencers and people with YouTube channels are more famous than you. So please, just stop. We're tired of your Illuminati, Hollywood, pedophile ways. We're tired of watching you sell your souls and get 5 million plastic surgeries. We're tired of your sexual scandals and the blackmail and the divorces. We're tired of you. Go away. Just stop. Go the fuck away. We don't like you anymore. We hate you. We hate your fucking guts. And we have no patience for your crap when we're starving and we're dying and we don't have any fucking toilet paper. So fuck you, Gal Gadot. Fuck you, Wonder Woman. You're fucking hot, but fuck you. And that's that. She does look good. There's no question about that. But you know what? That video fucking sucked. Okay. Anyways. I did want to talk a little bit about the Godzilla movies. Now that I got that whole cringeworthy imagination video out of the way. And I promise I'm not going to go on and on with this show because we've already gone 3 hours. And we don't need to be on the air for freaking infinity, right? So let's rein it in a little bit. I want to talk about Godzilla, the real motherfucking killer. Godzilla. You remember when that movie came out in 1998 with, they call him Liz now, the Godzilla that didn't walk upright and he didn't blow fire. He looked like a giant iguana. Movie fucking sucked. It's better than they make it out to be. It had Mark Wahlberg in it, but it fucking sucked. These new Godzilla movies are everything that movie wasn't. That's why people like them. There's problems with them. They're not showing Godzilla enough. I know I already talked about this, but I like Godzilla. So Subi. So I'm watching these movies, right? Fucking Godzilla. And in the latest one, he's fighting this huge 3-headed dragon called King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah. And Godzilla, normally he just beats the shit out of the other monsters, right? He's almost always the strongest one. That's why they call him King of the Monsters. But this fucking King Ghidorah, he's got 3 heads. And he doesn't shoot fire out of his mouth. He shoots fucking lightning out of his mouth. And Godzilla just can't handle this guy. He just can't handle him. This fucking King Ghidorah is just kicking his ass. And it happens in all the movies. Like, forget the latest one. In all the past ones, King Ghidorah is just fucking Godzilla up. The only monster I've seen fuck Godzilla up more than King Ghidorah would probably be Mechagodzilla. Because Mechagodzilla just took Godzilla to school. Oh shit, he just fucked him up. Like, oh man, he had so many weapons. But I heard that Mechagodzilla is going to be in this new movie with King Kong, and that's what I'm excited about. You know, forget King Ghidorah. I want to see fucking Mechagodzilla, because Mechagodzilla, man, you know, if you thought King Ghidorah fucked Godzilla up, Mechagodzilla just fucking, oh man, I felt so bad for Godzilla. It's like you see a dog that gets hit by a car and you feel so bad for it. That's how I felt about Godzilla when he was just getting fucked up by Mechagodzilla. So Mechagodzilla is going to be in this new movie. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm kind of hoping that Godzilla gets his ass kicked purely because that's how the other movies went, right? Godzilla pretty much got his ass kicked. So I'm hoping it's like that. Like, I hope he just Just gets fucked up the whole movie. And then at the end, he does what he did in the original Mechagodzilla movie. He just like grabs him with the lightning, like he turns magnetic, and he just grabs Mechagodzilla's head and just rips his head clean off. Holy shit, when I saw that when I was a kid, I was like, oh my god, I just saw the most badass thing of all time. Holy shit. When he ripped Mechagodzilla's head off, whoops. It's so fucking cool. I just wanted to share that. I'm sorry if I bored the shit out of you. Godzilla's not boring. I'm sorry if I bored the shit out of you. I just wanted to tell you that. That's all I've got for today. That's all I fucking got. Because I'm Daniel, and I sometimes do 5-hour shows, but 3 hours is enough. It's enough. We don't gotta go on and on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I can't do this show every hour of every day for the rest of my life. I would if I could. Go to endofdaysradio.com. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the show. Go to endofdaysradio.com. Check out the guest list there. Go donate to End of Days Radio. Please. I'm asking. Donations help so much. They really do. Especially in these trying times. It especially helps in these trying times because there's a coronavirus and I can't work. So before, where I was asking you to support the show, keep the lights on and maybe give it some beer money. Now it's not even that at the moment. It's like money I need for milk and for eggs. So if you don't mind donating, thank you very much. I love you guys. I really do. Because you are the wind beneath my wings. I do this show purely because of you guys. I say this over and over. It's about you because I love you and I'm going to hug every single one of you one of these days. When we have our gathering, I'm going to hug every single one of you. I will. I'm not afraid of viruses. I don't care if you're, I don't care if you're a lesbian or a crackhead or a Wiccan or an alien. I don't care if you're a person made out of rubber and you can stretch in all kinds of cool ways. Whatever your secrets are safe with me as long as you're good and you don't hurt children. That's my rule, okay? And what's with that fucking Sarah Silverman? She has an actual comedy sketch where she thinks it's fucking funny to pull up in a fucking pedo van. That's her idea of entertainment and funny. I don't know what the fuck that is. She can do better than that, right? Sarah Silverman can be pretty funny sometimes. So what's with the stupid fucking pedo skits and shit like that? If I was her, I would try to erase every record of any of that from my career. And that little fucking Spence guy from King of Queens, him too. Because he was in that skit with her. And they need to fucking just rinse that shit from all human history. Because everybody's going to think that shit about them forever if they don't. So go to endofdaysradio.com. Remember to donate to End of Days Radio. Who do we have on next week? Let's see, huh? Oh, you guys are going to love this. You remember C-Murph? Or I think we just called him Connor when he was on. He's the guy that came on with the crazy videos of the triangle crafts and talking about these experiences he's been having. Well, he's got a whole nother thing he's going to go into. He's been really researching this mud flood and hidden history, and he's about to make his big break as a researcher. So this show is going to be very fresh, very new. A lot of you people fucking love Connor. I'm still getting feedback. How do I keep track of Connor? Who is this guy? Who is C-Murph? How do I keep track of this guy? And I tell them, he's just on Twitter for now, but we're going to do another show with him next week. And there's going to be a lot of video element and picture element, so you might want to try to catch the live show on YouTube or at least watch it on YouTube. And I'll remind you when the show airs. So check that out. And then the following week, we're gonna bring on Thomas. Keep trying to do a show with him. Thomas Alpha Mega Energy. You can go look at his shit right now if you want. But we've been trying to put a show on, but something always happens. Something always gets in the way. So we're gonna remedy that Not this coming week, but the week after that. And we'll finally do a show with them. And then, hey, I don't have anything. It might be break time. I don't know. It might not be. I know you guys don't want me to go on break. So if you have any guest suggestions, if you have anybody you'd like to recommend to the show, remember, you can reach me at Daniel, endofdaysradio@gmail.com. That's Daniel, endofdaysradio@gmail.com. Is there anything else at all that I'm forgetting? No. Thank you, everybody. I love you. And I will see you next time.